Hello,
So
everyone.
anyways, then I was like, what an ass. Oh, so we're live? Yeah.
Classic. Hey guys, we got another Real Talk strategy episode after many weeks. We've been caught up with casting regionals, and I was moving, so that didn't help either. But I have moved, and the regionals are starting to calm down. There's only 3 days left, and that's actually going to be our first discussion today. So instead of asking how my co-hosts are feeling, we're just going to jump right into it. feardragon, your opinion on the Swiss format. Go.
That's great. I think it's great.
No, you don't.
Sorry, I was venting about it before the show. That's why it was a bit of a joke. Yeah, so I think there's some good about the Swiss format and there's some not so great about the Swiss format. And I will say put a little asterisk by everything I'm about to say because I feel like I need to like run simulations or something on it to really see what's exactly is going on. But I also can't run simulations because I still don't know how the internal MMR ranking stuff goes for how they decide seeding and everything. But my kind of take on it has just been that the first round of Swiss format matches, I know that like we keep saying and all the commentators keep saying the matches will get better over time, and they did. But the first round really felt like it was almost unnecessary. Like there was very little going on in that first round. Second round, I would say like half of the matches, if not more, were still also like very one-sided. And then we started getting some really sick matches and stuff. And I will say we did have some really cool matches in the second round. And I will also give credit and say we also had some cool upsets in the first round, like Wayne beating Showtime and stuff. I can't really like just completely dismiss it, but it felt still like okay, in the past, when you have group stages, there were a lot of games for sure that didn't really matter as much. And I will say that I think that kind of got somewhat compensated by the fact that we had a B stream. Not only was it nice for people who were super diehards and want to just watch as much StarCraft as possible, but when you put multiple matches together, then you just pick the A stream was just picking the best of those matches, or like the most likely one that was going to be an interesting or fun match to hype up and all that stuff. And then it kind of gave you like a little bit of compensation for the fact that there wouldn't always be good matches. But there was an important other part of that, which is the matches that were well-rounded or pretty even for the most part, they were just spread out all over the place because it's just groups. It's just, they just happen kind of a little bit whenever. There's a little bit of logic in how they do it to try and make sure that the final day is some really hype matches and everything. But for the most part, it was spread out. This is just like concentrated. Hey, first 3 days, how badly do you really want to watch this? Like, do you really want to tune in for this? And you just look at the lineups and it's like, it's all so concentrated. At least before it would be like banger match, like okay match, maybe not so great match, but another banger match, then another like okay match, 2 banger matches. Like it was interspersed in. And I think that kind of made things a little bit better and made it more likely for people to look at the names and be like, yeah, I want to watch that. And they would maybe sit through some of the other matches and stuff to watch Cyril or whoever else play. But now it's just kind of like, why would I actually? A lot of the time I looked at those like first round matches and I watched it just because I was working the broadcast. But honestly, if I wasn't working, I probably wouldn't bother to watch and I'd wait to find out from people if there was anything that really was cool that happened. And then I would tune in for it. I don't know. I think that I have a lot to say still on the Swiss format stuff, but I also don't want to turn this into Revy monologues for 10 minutes and Dave and Jess just look at me weirdly. So, thoughts?
I refuse to acknowledge my name.
Okay, well then,
do you have a rebuttal?
Dave.
Yeah, oh, fair enough. Yeah, no, I personally, I get what you're saying, and I actually do agree. I think with maybe the internal MMR or like internal whatever they used for seeding, that needs to at the very least be more public. But then at the same time, then you run the risk of people gamifying the system where they're like, oh, well, it's actually a guaranteed net loss for me to win the first round of a Swiss. So therefore, I'll throw the first match. And yeah, which is like already like a risk. I know that Hellraiser was sharing some like discontent with that, but that's kind of like the risk of a Swiss format regardless, is like you can always just play the odds. And the counter argument to that in general of just a normal thing is like, well, if you want a higher internal seeding, play the game better so that you're like, like there's a reason that Cyril would be the number one internal seed and someone like one of the players that didn't make it through would have been a lower seed. Like, I don't want to name anyone because obviously they're way better than me and blah, blah, blah. And there was that whole thread on Reddit about, if you're not good enough, you shouldn't guess the game. Don't be critical of the players. Even though that's literally our jobs. But I do think that in general, we had a lot more meaningful matches. And maybe I'm a little bit more biased because specifically the days that I covered were all super high leverage days. Like I covered the Friday, Saturday, Sunday of the end of the Swiss format, which was all rounds 4 and 5. So literally every single match that I covered was high leverage, high importance, and it felt like they were playing for their lives. Like the players were playing so out of their mind, like really digging deep. And then it's really kind of sad to go from that. And then you go back to like this playoff bracket where you have the first seed versus the 16th seed and then the second versus 15th.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's this weird situation where you go from super high leverage max packs down 1-0 in the series on the verge of being eliminated by Mana. Mana's playing out of his mind. And then, unfortunately for Mana, he loses steam a little bit. Max Packs does Max Packs things, but it's still like such a cool thing. You have Firefly, who's on the verge of losing a game versus a player named Oriana, who I cover like everything. I still haven't cast one of his games yet. Like, and he's played in a bunch of the ESL Koreas, and like that was like a super sick comeback from, I think it was like at one point it was like 72 supply to 37. And there was bio and mines inside of Firefly's main base. Firefly holds, pushes back, like wins this game. It's a sick comeback. Just like all the games were super great. But then the issue with that, of course, is then everyone can ignore like most of the first rounds and then just be like, oh, I'll just tune in for the last weekend of Swiss. And then I'll tune in when the playoffs get interesting. So it's like, even with all I'm saying about it being good, there are still downsides.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I guess the most important thing is, do we prefer it to the round robin?
For me, massively. Okay. Because, like, I don't think Wayne makes playoffs if he has to try and replicate that performance over the course of 7 best of 3s. I don't think he has the steam. But I think when every match matters and your preparation actually matters, it makes for really meaningful stuff. Oh yeah, I didn't even mention that Akaran forced a draw in the elimination match between like there was just so many sick games on that weekend. Literally, it's worth watching the entirety of that weekend. And I mean, I'm obviously biased as, I got to watch all the games, and we're always more biased about the games we cover. I do think it's better than previous round robin though.
All right, feardragon?
Yeah, I definitely can see a lot of kind of the points that you're making on things like that. Like, I do agree. Like, again, the last couple of days are great. I wholeheartedly agree also on just how going from the last couple of days to the playoff bracket.
You don't have to say it. I'll say it. They were one-sided stomps.
Oh yeah, 100%. Like it was super one-sided stomps for a lot of the matches. And I think it's like that. It's the fact that I don't know. I'm comparing things to a lot of stuff that it's hard for me to like distinguish between running group stages and running group stages last year versus trying to run group stages and how that would maybe look this year. For example, just budget-wise, there may not be a B stream. So there'd be a bunch of, like, would there be a trade-off of a bunch of matches that don't get covered? / could that have just been open up to community casting or something? So anyone in the community can cover, like, B stream or something, basically matches that are not happening on mainstream. and then, everything else could just be covered on mainstream, things like that. So I have a hard time distinguishing that. Another really big one is the playoff bracket, and how I'm trying to think about how like the Swiss format leads into the playoff bracket and everything, and how all the regions merge together. There's so many changes, but like that being single elimination, I think also makes things really, really rough, where I still am not 100% sure how all the seeding is done for that. And I think this was another frustration I had, was not only would not really have a good idea of the internal MMR rankings and stuff, and maybe like players just knew this without, and I didn't or something, but I literally looked at the rulebook and it basically was just a massive to-do. We haven't figured out how Swiss format stuff works in the rulebook. And things like, it looks like map score ended up mattering. And that was never really a discussion or anything. Like players could maybe be picking strategies and stuff on whether or not, hey, if you're up 1-0, is it really important you get a 2-0, or are you willing to just throw out like something that could win, but it's really just about picking up the series? It's like, well, no, it actually looked like, from what I could tell at least, and I don't even have a confirmation of this, that map score really did matter, and that did affect where your seating is, which could really matter when you're, say, I don't know, like Gung Fu Banda, and there's a chance that you could have played Serral, or there's a chance that you could have played like Hero Marine or something. The difference between those two players is, I mean, I feel like fairly notable and stuff. So I don't know. I think I feel like some of the way that the Swiss format got played out is my TLDR, and my point is that I have a personally hard time distinguishing between what this would have looked like with a group stage format, given the changes and stuff that had to happen, and also intermixing that in with like communication stuff on how the actual Swiss format worked.
Yeah. It's very difficult. I think it's a good point. We don't really know what it would look like if we still had the same format. And I still think the same format would still end up being boring as well, just because it is the same. But it is it is something that people have complained about, this new format. I feel like the complaints your complaints aren't valid, general viewers. I just feel like the complaints that are actually being thrown out, I can't think of like possibly actually being that different from the round robin. So the main complaint that we get from like feedback from the tweet that Alex made, or the Team Liquid post, is that it's just too confusing. And from my perspective, as also a fan who was basically more of a fan than ever in this current system, because I only cast 4 days instead of the 11 that I was doing previously. It's about the same amount of like, oh, I don't really know what this means, that the round robin had, in my opinion. Which you're like, wait, what group is this? And what are the players' scores? And what do they need to get through? Except in this format, you can literally say if someone loses 3, they're out. If someone wins 3, they're in. Whereas in the round robin, there was always that like, well, technically this person could be 2-3, but actually still get through. Like, so I know when I brought this up on stream, someone suggested it, as simple as saying like Swiss format, Bly's 1-1 and Serral's 2-0. Somewhere on the graphics would already go a long way, and I do agree with that. But I just don't think it would contribute that much to a decrease in viewership, which is also something I was going to want to talk about, which is that the viewership for regionals this time around is pretty bad. Sometimes in the past, regionals would start off around 3,000-4,000 just because people didn't really realize it was starting, and it was some of the beginning games, which didn't always guarantee the best results. And people just needed to mostly get time to warm into it. But especially once Europe started up, and then week 2 started up, we'd be closer to 10,000, with some of the weekend playoff games, like a Clem versus Serral or something, getting upwards to 15, and continuing on as the playoffs went. So I want to discuss that. Like, do you think that the format and all the complaints that you guys have had about it is affecting the viewership, or is there something else? Because I would by far more so point the finger at the general negative attitude of a community after the announcement that the support has ceased. Because that definitely delivers a harsh blow even to the most optimistic people. And we already had that once with Blizzard saying they're not going to do any content. And we had it again with Blizzard saying they're not going to support it all anymore. And the general confusion as to whether or not we're kind of like a, I don't know how to put it, like we're kind of like, it's still like a tier 1 production esport, I guess is the way I'll put it. Because we're definitely not tier 1 in terms of viewership or money. But we set up, right? We have the same similar setup to a lot of other esports that go on, where we put on our suit and tie and we have the studio production, even if it's online, and we have our vertical cameras, and you know what I mean? And now we don't. And people are like legitimately still unsure. They come in asking like, oh, is StarCraft 2 even happening this year? Like, is there a second DreamHack? What's going on? And then people who do tune in literally see a very familiar setup in a kind of a wrong way, where I generally agree. It looks more like a Wardy stream than a big hullabaloo. This is the regionals. So, yeah, what are your guys' opinions? Do you think the format's really doing it in like people say it is? Or there's this other factor that is impacting people who don't speak up, which is usually a large portion of the audience?
I'm going to answer your question by not actually giving an answer and say I don't know. But like I think that it's because there's so many things that happen. If you want to scientific method it and be like, well, here's our baseline, and then we'll change one thing and measure things. We've basically changed. There's 6 major things have changed. One is the perception around like the community, or like the announcements from ESL and Blizzard and all that stuff. So like that's one change. The second change is the other one that you mentioned, which is just literally like change of production. We don't have like things that are immediately visible and like or sometimes visible, such as like not having player cameras or interviews at all, basically. Not having like a host or any of that kind of stuff. So like that's the second thing that you already kind of mentioned. Third one is I think you also kind of mentioned, and this one is hard to read, especially because it's hard to tell if this is an issue with the format being hard to understand, which I'm actually with you. I don't think it is. I think that some slightly better graphics could have made this a lot easier to understand for people, because instead of just the commentators repeatedly saying, all right, yeah, if you win 3, you go to the playoffs. If you lose 3, then you're out of the event. Like, imagine if they just had a simple graphic that was like, I don't know, Super Mario Head Lives or something, and it's just like, he's like down to his last life. Like, we just straight up Red Bulled it or something, which is something I kept wanting to make a reference to, but the event's sponsored by Monster, so I can't really reference the Red Bull event where people had lives. But anyways, like I think that I have a hard time believing that it was just really difficult to understand, and more so that it was just unfamiliar. So I feel like that third reason can kind of be like glossed over. The fourth thing is that we haven't actually finished the entire thing, and we do usually have a slow start to things compared to viewership in the past. We are definitely still lower, but we still usually do have a ramp up when into the playoffs, and we are still in the very first round of the playoffs. And like we were saying, these have been like the worst matchups so far. So in that way, I think there is like an argument to be made there. And then this is another thing I've been thinking a lot about the Swiss format. There are particular players, especially when you talk about like YouTube and stuff, you'll see this really happen, but you'll see this happen even with players like Cyril and everything. Certain players just bring in viewership, and it's usually the players that are at the very top. We have literally picked a format where the better you are, the fewer games you play.
Yeah.
And the worse you are, like if you're absolutely at the bottom, then you also don't play very many games because you get eliminated after 3 series. But it's like the players that play the most are the ones that are not doing super well, but are also not doing like too terribly. It's like that middle of the pack set of players. And those are, I mean, like those are some players. There are definitely some that like still have name brand recognition and everything, but they don't necessarily have the name brand recognition of like a Cyril or a Rainer and things like that. And I mean, almost a little bit blessed that Max Pax had got to go to round 5 and stuff. We got to see more games from him, or like Clem and everything had to play an extra round or something. But like we literally have picked a format where not only do they play fewer games, but then even when they do play games, because of the seeding being so dramatic and it's single elimination, they then go on to play like super one-sided matches on the first round of the playoffs, and then even potentially second round might still be a little like that. I don't know. Those are some of my points. And like the last one that I was just gonna mention, because I'm really on a monologuing habit. I'm sorry. Is just I don't really know if marketing has really been big for this event or anything.
Oh,
Like
there's been none.
Yeah, but and like
Zero.
you could make an argument that we just haven't had it in the past either as much. But I feel like there used to at least be some plugging, even if it was very, very minor, for like Blizzard or ESL would like talk about it a bit more and everything. It really does feel like this is, and I can't tell if it's just recency bias, but it feels like this is another example of nobody knew, or like so many people, unless you were plugged in, didn't even know it was happening.
Yeah.
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 Honestly, I think I don't want to add too much more because both of you have made some really great points, but I think it is a combination of just about everything. There's a weird, it's almost a feeling of obligation, it feels like, that this is happening as opposed to like excitement and joy. Which, I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I still love the game. Like, I still love casting and I still love what I'm doing. And like, I wouldn't be doing this if I wasn't. But like, it doesn't feel as though that's been reflected as much, or it doesn't feel as though that's there. I think the lack of pomp and circumstance regarding the actual games has been really, has really contributed to that like general feeling of deflation. I think it's going to sound weird a little bit, but I think as well, some of like maybe the slowdowns. So a lot of people are in the boat, and I think I even fall in that boat a little bit of like, Microsoft, please save our asses right now. Like, please step up behind Blizzard, stab them with the sword, take the helm. I know it's been destroyed. Take the helm of domination, slip it on, and Bolvar feardragon that shit. Save us. Fucking take over. But it's been like stalled out by this stupid shit in the UK. And yes, we got the approval just now, but like, it feels like everything has just been kind of like ground to a halt. And then in addition, like that all started when it was like, okay, Blizzard, we're pulling the plug on like, you know, providing the actual prize pool boost. And then GSL did the whole thing. Like, we don't need to go back over it, but it's been a rocky road for the last, what, 4 months, 6 months?
Yeah.
4 months, maybe?
Yeah, we'll talk about the Microsoft stuff and the implications
yes. Yeah.
today as
but
well.
That's just like, alluding to the...
Yeah, no, you're adding on to the idea that it's not even just that people are sad. There are, I think, a decent amount of people that are even kind of waiting apprehensively to see if it is worth getting invested into, as Bear's been saying in chat. And as much as it sucks, like you can't argue against it. You know, 4 years ago, you absolutely scoff and roll your eyes at the people who are like, "Isn't this a dead game? Isn't this like not happening anymore?" But after two pretty fatal blows to any game, which is that 1, no new content, and then 2, no publisher support happens. It's hard not to say that it is actually disappearing. Lots of people retiring as well, and more of it goes down to crowdfunding, which means that I think eventually we'll get to the point where we are just like not getting a lot of views, and then people are eager for any content, so that when something bigger does pop up, it becomes a bigger deal just because it is bigger. But right now we're like on the tail end of watching something very big and relatively steady for 13 years shrink drastically, which, to a lot of people that just means it could disappear. Like, how much am I getting invested into? But then eventually it might turn into something like one of the smaller games in the esports world, where, on the day-to-day, there's not many tournaments, there's not much viewership, but then suddenly the big tournament happens and everyone's just excited to finally have something again. But we're not there yet. We're at the sad spiral down portion of it. So I do think that's very much impacted people's intentions to pay attention to events. And then it does not help when it does look like everything else that's happening. So, what makes this so much more important or so much different? But it is sad because this means that Gamers Without Borders actually at times were beating us, us being the ESL channel and viewership for this year. And I think that could be evidence to the pomp of the the setup, but then also, as Ravi was saying, the amount of time that the big name players got on stage, and a very simple format in terms of knowing that someone is going to be out of a life or additional lives. But yeah,
I want to counter that one point and say Gamers 8 format was not.
It wasn't easy as in terms of like, is this really the last life? But it was easy in terms of reading a bracket. So if
it was a quadruple elimination bracket.
If Spirit lost the first bracket and people were like, wait, is he over? You just be like, no, he's in another bracket. And you're like, oh, okay. Yeah. Which I still think is relatively easy. It certainly is when you look at Wikipedia.
I think that the explanation for the Swiss format thing is also that simple.
Oh, yeah.
But it's just when you look at that Wikipedia, you're like, what is going on here?
That is exactly the difference that I'm pointing to. You see 4 brackets and you're like, that's a little confusing, but I understand brackets. You look at the Swiss system and you're like,
that's fair.
I'm currently looking at the Swiss system and I'm still having trouble like tracking what. Yeah, it's it is very visually confusing. And I obviously we all know it better than most. It's just funky.
Yeah. Someone pointing out as well that the casting is kind of feeling more and more like a day-to-day cast. I would say for that particular match, feardragon and Wardy cast it. It was a lot because it was watching a player not live up to their standard. So you basically like it's really difficult.
What match are we talking about?
Clem versus Wayne.
Oh.
Yeah. I mean, I would say some of that is difficult to achieve because you're just like, yeah, Wayne's playing really well, but Clem's just really playing really weird and odd. But then on the other side, I do think, if you had the old setup, there would be some injected hype because that would literally be the host's role for 6 minutes. Is that they would be like, oh my God, what a series, amazing! I can't believe Clem almost lost. Wow, that's great. And then the analytical caster would be like, well, it's because Clem wasn't playing very well, to be honest. But you still had the host kind of pushing it along, and and you also would just have natural breaks, and you would have more conversation because it's not literally 2 people, and one is doing producing, observing, and casting, and a little bit of admin work as well. So that what do you? I don't know how much you can really expect. And then if the other guy, the just caster, suddenly was like out of their mind, like freaking out, and then the main guy who's like observing and shit is like, oh, I'm sorry, I was responding to an admin message. It's just like the weirdest cast ever. So there really is, I feel like, no winning. My approach, literally, I have changed my approach to casting the regionals to try and make it still different than if I was just casting by myself on my channel, but not at all able to try and even get close to the replication of like a live event where I get really hyped and really excited. My approach has just been to make it like more like a home story cup thing, just to literally have fun and giggle and laugh, because I don't see really a solid alternative when the possibility of your co-caster being distracted is insanely high. So
yeah,
we can absolutely talk about that, which is the production of the EPT regionals.
Yeah, I mean, in regards to what you're talking about, like with even to extend the point a little bit, like even just the prediction portion, like going into Clem versus Wayne, people would have been like, man, Wayne is playing really well, but Clem 2-1 to Dark this morning, who he traditionally gets the crap kicked out of by, and he looked really sharp. It's going to be a 3-1 if Wayne manages to steal a map. And then when you're like, well, it's 2-1 now, like blah, 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 you've created an expectation, and then the expectation's already been broken. So even just not in regards to the host being like, what a series, you also create this primer beforehand where you've set the expectation like, well, like, here's what should have happened. Here's what's happened. And even if, yes, one player is playing worse, yeah, you're missing out on that in addition. And then like you said, I do think it can get tricky. First of all, trying to coordinate things with a co-caster who is doing multiple things at the same time. That's really challenging. Like Wardy and Beomulf were both doing like everything. In some cases, obviously, other people were observing, but like we didn't have a dedicated observer. We didn't have a shot caller, like production, a producer. Didn't have like anything behind the scenes. Like it was literally as though it was a Wardy stream, a ZombieGrub stream, a Beomulf stream, a Steadfast stream, a feardragon stream. Never mind, he doesn't stream. That was meant to be more cutting, but you undercut it by
No,
agreeing
it's
instantly.
true,
Yeah, but like it's challenging when you have to do that and then also try and feed off of the energy of a co-caster. It's just not. It's not a simple thing. Like we're just human. There's only so much we can do.
Mm-hmm.
And then in addition, you don't want to be disingenuous and be like, oh my God, like this is the greatest game. Like we've never seen this before. This is the first time this has ever happened. And it's like, Clem, I don't know, like forget Stim for 45 seconds. And it's like, what do you want me to do with that? Like he made a mistake. Like, do you want me to be like, holy crap, Wayne is now the next Dark or the next Raynor or the next Cyril? Or do you want me to be honest about it and say like, well, Clem had a little bit of an off day.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. I think if anything, this the system has proved how different those segments make things feel. And I think there's a little bit of education for me as a caster as well, which for the most part, I was very eager to get rid of those segments because there were way too many, which were stomps. It was like Cyril versus, I don't know, Bly. I don't know why I'm thinking of Bly. And then you would go in saying, well, Cyril's pretty favored. Another guy would say, well, Cyril's pretty favored. And the host would be like, is there any chance? And the two would say no in different ways. And then we get into the game and it'd be a 3-0. And then we come back and the host would go like, your thoughts. And then both of them would say basically the same thing that they just said on the cast because we don't have actual analysts. I was eager to get rid of that. I think a lot of us were. But as stupid as it sounds, that still added a certain level of, as you were saying, like it set the expectation. So if something different happened, it really hit harder. And then just in general, adding that element of something different and something that would kind of bookend a series instead of letting them all kind of mash together. And yeah, now appreciating a bit more of what the host can do in terms of bringing out some of the storylines, even if they're super obvious, because that 6-minute death segment where we really, really emphasize that Bly is screwed is not comparable to the 1 minute we have before the game starts as the two of us saying, yeah, Bly is screwed. So if he does do an upset, it just doesn't hit as hard. So that's I'm a bit surprised by that, but thinking on it and seeing how it's gone, it does make sense that this would be something that people would actually, acknowledge is missing. So, but there's nothing to do about it, just to be clear. There's absolutely nothing to do about it. I don't know actually what you would do to try and make this current setup with the production as it is something that's still unique. Barrett suggested in chat, like what if you fly like certain casters to each other's houses? So you at least have like in-person casting for some of it. And as cool as that would be, they're definitely not going to fork over $1,000 for that. And the setup of it would be very odd. You'd basically have to be like, I guess like feardragon would then have to become one of the production people, and then me and Steadfast would fly to him probably. I guess on like different days.
I think somebody would be losing a job, and I think Up a Tree would get the call, is what would happen. Just geographically, him and I live so close together. That's.
Well, there you go.
I think you'd have some people getting literally hired because of geography.
That's true.
Did you stop working with him because it just wasn't working out? Just didn't. weren't getting along. I noticed you haven't cast with Uppetry for the last couple of
Yeah.
weeklies,
It's clearly because of some kind of rift and not because they switched ESL Korea from Saturday night to Monday morning at 5 a.m. my time. And it's definitely got nothing to do with the fact that he's only playing Tears of the Kingdom right now. Neither of those things have any factor. It's exactly what you said. You nailed it, Fear Dragon, as always.
Yeah, I'm glad I could spit truth there. But yeah, it's a cool idea. Okay, I'm gonna take the core element of what you were saying, ZombieGrub. Forget what Steadfast was saying. That was total garbage. But the thing that you were saying about like what that segment brought, which is that it was effectively like I feel like what you were saying is it was a change of pace, right? It created like a different dynamic from just what was happening in the cast. It allowed like a little bit of a different energy level and like energy flow because there was like the host and everything.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that is what is missing to me. And I think the other way you could go about it is doing something more similar to what Bear was saying, where you change the vibe of it to just be very casual or fun, where it's two people in a room. Like, and I imagine it actually would be a lot of fun watching, say, like Roddy and I don't know, Wardy or something, like just sitting in a room shooting the shit together and having a good time and having a bit of a giggle, kind of taking on the extreme end of the approach of what you were talking about you've been trying to bring to the show. And I think that would be a lot of fun also. I think if they want to go the more professional route and stuff though, like having those extra little segments, and I don't even think they have to be as long as they were in the past. That was the problem with them in the past, because they would be, every time we did one of those extra desk segments, it would add an extra 7 minutes to the broadcast because of the 3 to 5 minutes that the segment would take, and then another 3 to like 6 minutes for like advertisement required break time and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So that was the problem. And I think if we just had more segments that were not even necessarily like massive monetary input or anything, but imagine if they did just pay Roddy like an extra media day rate and like paid one editor to cut together a bunch of like fun little highlight like interview segment things like TSL oftentimes does. Or imagine if they, I don't know, had like some kind of extra tiny segments that just add a little bit to the show.
Yeah.
I feel like that could change the pace of the show and make it not feel like a Wardy thing where it's literally break, caster cams, games, caster cams, break. That is the entire show. It is literally that formula for 9 hours. That is what you could boil the entire show down to.
False. It is missing one important element. It is missing chat interaction. So it's actually worse.
That's a good point.
It is empirically
right.
worse.
Yeah,
it is
true.
the only thing that makes a personal stream personal.
Yeah.
You've now removed it. It's literally just a stream.
Oh, that's a good point as well. Yeah, there's got to be something that's changed. I do like the idea of just basically adding segments. I mean, I feel like if we really put our heads together, we could think up different segments that were still easy to do for the casters at hand and would be very short. Because we definitely don't want to add 6 minutes of talking, 3 minutes of ads, and then 2 minutes of intros to every single series, because we're already being overworked for less pay as well. So that is just, we got to also try and avoid that. And seriously, the amount of people who are going to want to be in Wardy and Beomulf shoes, if you guys haven't picked up on it, those are the only two doing the production, we're just going to be out of luck, actually, too. All right, that's another kind of weird, it's a little behind the scenes so I'm kind of talking about stuff I probably shouldn't be, but the current format is maybe not all that sustainable, to be honest, because the ask of the producers, Beomulf and Wardy currently, is extraordinary. They literally replace an entire production team with one person. So I'm not talking on their behalf and whether or not they'd be able to do it again, but it's a lot, and the reward isn't as much there, and the
reward is you
and the
basically get
fun.
to work more days. It's not necessarily that you're getting paid a ton more.
Right. Yes, exactly. And the fun isn't there either. I mean, these days you can try to make them as fun as you can, but you know, we're feeling all the things that the the chat's feeling as well, just a little bit differently. So I'm just bringing it up because it is very tough to try and do something. And it's going to be very tough to even try and inject any enthusiasm if the days are going to continue being 8 hours long with hour and a half gaps in between, which you just can't help. So
And even to just add to that a little bit, if anyone then has an issue with production, they're then taking a shot directly at Beomulf or Wardy, which is
but I don't mind that
biggest deal.
No,
Not
but
the biggest deal, but it is a mental. It's another mental thing. It's a needle.
I definitely agree. Like production, as much as I got yelled at once because I said something about production, as much as production can sometimes also be like, hey, like chill out and blaming us, they are a amalgamation. They're just like a cloud of people that no one actually knows, except of course the casters, but like the viewers don't. So they're just like, it's just production. But as soon as it's figured out that Wardy and Beomulf are doing everything, suddenly it's like Wardy sucks at observing while casting, not production sucks at observing. So that's a dig. Yeah.
And exactly. And there was even a tweet that went out that was like specifically being like, wow, I can't believe how bad this observing is. This is like terrible. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I was like, oh, that's like obviously the individual in question had, like I get it. They are an observer and they wanted to be included as the observer, but it wasn't really a productive thing, I think.
Oh no, absolutely not.
To say, yeah.
No. Mapu's a interesting character, but I mean, he's not exactly wrong in that the observing is subpar for a major event. But that's not a shot at Wardy or Beomulf. Actually, I think they're observing when they cast are just casting and producing a simple stream. Mm-hmm. I would say I basically have no issues with it. But because they're also producing and trying to also talk with admins occasionally, there are definitely times where I will have to watch off the minimap if I'm hand off the keyboard and mouse, because I do that very often. Or I'll just be like, oh, there's clearly something important happening on the minimap and, Wardy's missing it. But it's not his fault. He's doing literally 3 or 4 jobs at a single time. So.
Yep.
Yeah. Let me ask you, do you guys think at this point, would you prefer if it was everyone can cast on their own channels? Or even actually, I'd like to ask that question. And then I think the follow-up question is, what would you think about a hybrid model where there are more of those in-between segments and everything? And they can even take up more time. Like the mainstream becomes something that it doesn't quite solve a lot of like the production problems or any of that kind of stuff. But like maybe the show is a lot shorter on the mainstream, but there are more simultaneous games going on that are happening, and it's just open to community casting or something. Now the mainstream has a lot more like in between like time content. So you have like the interviews and everything else going on potentially. What would you guys think about that? Like where it's either like full on community casting, or if there was just literally a shorter show where they compensate for the extra time with community casting, basically.
Tell you what, Ravi, since we're negotiating, as long as I get a full day rate to do it on my own channel, I'm in. You know what? Double day rate. Triple. All right, let's do it. Yeah, I'm in.
I will say, like, I'm not going to obviously spoil numbers or anything behind the scenes, but like there are a few people that I literally look at like their streams and what they can pull in for viewership. And then I look at like kind of what they earn for like their day rate and stuff for some of these shows for the online stuff. And I'm like, I don't know that their income just literally on their own stream wouldn't be pretty close to what they were making anyways. Like, I think I don't think this is true for every one of us, but like, I think for some of them, it's like, yeah, I think you're probably just like missing out actually by doing this, because you could literally just be growing your own stream while earning roughly the same income.
Yeah. There's definitely at least 1 or 2 people that is the case of. I don't know what it's like anymore, honestly. Like it used to be that it was a fact that they had to have these very long shows to hit their expectations. But that was when they were having like 13,000 as an average. Now that it's basically in the toilet, it's less than half that. Does it even matter anymore? Like, what expectations are we hitting? And if we're not hitting expectations, why not just go Fiesta style and just like everyone do whatever the hell you want? Or is this still barely good enough, the way that we're currently doing it, to match, like sponsor obligations and ESL expectations and stuff like that? I don't know. But I personally, at this rate, I think I would prefer something where we all cast. Obviously, there's going to be bigger streamers than others, so it's exactly like the Open Cups, where basically they get preference. And then the other guys can do whatever else they want. And then what would be cool is if we got like times to get together, so we're all still streaming, but it's like at 5:30, we're all gonna stop and talk about the games that we cast with each other, like a little round robin or a round table discussion type thing. I mean, that could be cool. Or even if it was literally just like two people cast the same game, and so they're like, hey, why not co-cast together? But then they also do different ones, so it's not just a totally repetitive stream. I think it would be more fun and would allow for a lot more freedom, and would probably, as far as the big streamer goes, whether it's Roddy or Wardy, because that's basically who it's going to be, would still probably get the similar viewership that the ESL stream is currently getting. So, but I don't know how likely that is to ever happen.
That's a really cool idea.
I think you're right, and that would get similar viewership, and I think you're additionally right in that the revenue would be similar, potentially greater.
If they did a good job using like if they did a good job even doing like a Twitch bounty or something after the show, something like that, where it's like, this isn't obviously sponsoring EPT, but like this is on their channel, they just do something like that, I think they could definitely, I would actually be pretty confident about that. I also think I would include, even though he wasn't really casting any of the days this season, like Pig I would also put up there.
Oh yeah.
Category.
Well, if Pig could do this, then he could only do early or late, right? He could pick and choose.
Yeah.
And that would be fine. Some people bringing up like interviews. I think interviews are fine enough to coordinate because you don't have to get them on camera. But people talking about cameras missing for the main production as well as for potentially what we're talking about, it's actually a much bigger issue than it might seem. Just because the coordination is really difficult. We literally had a person on the production team coordinate people's webcams and audio. So just throwing it out there. That's why we don't have it. They would be
and it still took a lot of setup time.
Yeah.
It still took a lot
to
of
give you an
setup time.
idea, you have to like to show like a little bit of like why this can be potentially complicated. You need to have players join whatever thing, like software or something. You have to like wrangle them to go join the thing before you can actually start the stuff, so that you can actually have player cameras and stuff in game or whatever. 2, you're in the middle of casting or doing whatever stuff is going on, and you don't really have, unless you like really take a longer break, you don't really have a reliable way of doing the audio checks for those players when you go into the interviews. 3, when you're doing these setups and everything and they're joining these calls, they can't, like if you're in Discord, you can't be like, well, I'm in a Discord with my co-caster and the player will just join the cast. Like that obviously doesn't work. You have to have an entirely separate program, but then you also have to have a way to feed in the audio so that both you and your co-caster can hear the audio for the player can hear the audio for you guys, but they can only hear it when they're in the interview, not when they're in the game. It's just like, it actually does require some like extra production effort. And even if and I'm not saying it's not solvable, it is totally solvable. People do it. But it adds a lot of extra overhead and a lot of extra shit for someone who's already running all the production and also observing and also casting at the same time.
Yeah. It's more difficult than it appears. So, I mean, people bring up WTL, and I think this is also something that has been suggested, is that there's a clean feed option. So you have a very small production crew, like 1 or 2 people, but their literal job is just to be more like the production. Set up the clean feed, and then you give it all to all of the streamers. and then they can coordinate cameras if they can, and they can ensure a quality of broadcast and sizing of the graphics and all the stuff that sponsors need. And then anyone can take it. And so that would be a lot more like WTL, right? Which is also basically free for all for casters. Like if you ask to cast, they'll let you. So I don't know if that is actually a viable system or it's just, you know, Chinese money being available, but
yeah, I think to run a clean feed, that's more than ESL would be willing to put in. Because I think for the production team that WTL runs, I think it's probably at least 3 people.
Well, no, I think the production team for a clean feed would actually be totally viable, because then what they would do is they wouldn't pay us any money. They'd say it's on your stream. So, you know, take it or leave it.
So, yeah, like you said, it's not viable.
I don't know. Like, I think it would be a lot more fun. You could literally do like 5 days of decent content if you're a big enough streamer already, anyways. Obviously, like someone trying to get into StarCraft casting wouldn't be making anything from this. But, you know, I do the GSL VODs, which everyone else does as well, but people still really enjoy it. And so I just took that as like great additional content for me. So it definitely doesn't make me as much money, like as even paying for the replays. But when we also consider that we should be bolstering our streams more than anything else for our future, it would make actually the most sense for us. Because even if the better pay directly is the money gained from casting that day in the current format, it's a limited time offer. Like, it's not going to exist maybe even next year. We might even have less days next season, because there are casters that weren't involved this season that could have been, like Nate and Loco. So, yeah, it just makes more sense if we could even try and focus on our streams.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense. And I think for that reason, it definitely would be beneficial for like commentators and stuff to do that. And I actually think here's the other aspect of what you were talking about way earlier that I really like about that solution. It's kind of like everyone's ties get loosened a bit. Everyone just gets to be a lot more chill if they're casting on their own stream. It's a lot less, here's a professional broadcast. People can have more fun. People can interact with the chat. They can do a lot of those things, and it actually ends up being a lot more appropriate or okay, as opposed to those are just things that are harder to do on an ESL broadcast. And I don't know. There's a lot of things that I actually do like about that. I don't know how ESL would feel about, say, like cracking open a beer or something on a community broadcast. But I mean, hey, like people do that kind of stuff on EPT, so well, why not? Or let's say EPT weekly and stuff. So like, I don't know, actually. I feel like that could also basically solve some of those other problems if that was opened up, actually.
Yeah. I think it's definitely something that we're going to have to look at after the testing phase is done, which is this season. Because this season has given us a lot more information than we could know if we just were guessing 3 weeks ago.
But do we have enough time to react before the next season, ZombieGrub?
Oh my god.
We only have like 5 months.
Don't even. He's making a joke because we'd always suggest new things and they'd be like, oh, we don't have enough time between seasons. And then they were like literally in the off season and they said the same thing, which is like, oh, I'm sorry, we didn't get around to it.
Also, I'm pretty sure the next season is in like
5 months.
Or October, November. Yeah.
Yeah, October 31st is when it starts. Not enough time.
Really?
Not enough time.
Yeah.
October 31st. That's amazing.
Yeah. Or 28th or something like that. But it's
it's
late
gonna be
October.
a scary day to see how it goes.
Yeah. Is there a reason you guys don't co-cast with each other for weeklies and just form a squad? Because as Steadfast was pointing out, you lose the direct chat interaction. You know, I can't just go off on a tangent when I'm casting the game. That gets a little boring and react to chat. Which sounds like it should be extremely difficult with a 2-minute delay, but it's absolutely still possible. So that's what's lost out. That's why I don't always ask to co-cast. So, anyways.
Steadfast stopped because he had a co-caster and had a falling out with them. So
yeah, clearly.
Yeah. Guess who it was? You'll never guess which co-caster I had a falling out with.
Creighton also.
And then whatever it takes to get to 60 characters.
Did not
on
the
YouTube.
entire community have a following? Anyways. Moving
Whoa.
on. Moving on.
Wow.
Whoa. No, but I think we kind of talked this one to death. It has been over an hour, almost an hour. So just TLDR, I don't think the current system is really gaining the viewership that I wanted. I mean, if everything else was totally the same, the production crew was around and Blizzard supported our game, there was no bad news, a Swiss format might have just been the difference maker that people were like, oh, thank God. But with everything else
yes.
attached to it, I mean, we really can't determine. So
I'm really curious. Okay, this is not really solving the problem for commentators or anything. It's just thinking about things from like a community perspective and for viewership. What do you guys think about the idea of if they just did continue to run the normal stream and everything, but they just allowed co-streaming?
Oh, co-streaming. Oh boy.
Like not even necessarily like clean feed, literally just co-streaming.
Yeah.
And then ESL gets to claim the viewership. Their sponsors are still being shown on all the other people's channels and stuff like that. Community gets more engagement because now it's not just, you know, commentators who are streaming it or whatever, potentially on their channel, like we were talking about. Now, like any players and, you know, random community members can just watch the stuff and talk with their chat.
I do think that, unfortunately, we're currently at a viewership where that would be very much obviously a negative impact. Unless, okay, so the problem I would say right now for co-streaming is that the actual return there for the sponsors is really vague right now. So co-streaming was a big thing and everyone was like, oh, this is really exciting. And then there was a bit of pushback from, you know, the typical people who aren't like winning out because of it. And then there was legitimate pushback from everyone as they realized, hey, maybe it actually isn't this like solution to all. So there's that. Like if Roddy gets 2,500 viewers and takes 1,000 viewers away from the average stream, which seems to be some weird math in there, but yeah, that's usually what happens. Does it make up for the mainstream losing those viewers? Saying, well, Roddy still has 2,500 and Wardy has 2,000 and whatever. We don't know. But I would say if it is down to just being like, oh, it's not going to harm anyone, the mainstream is still going to be where people go to for the most part, I would say that would actually be very obviously not the case. Where in Valorant and Global Offensive and all those types of games, it's a little more ambiguous. Like, yeah, Tarek gets like a ton of views, but Valorant main still gets 160,000, so... But 5,000 to 3,000 consistently is going to be pretty obvious.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. Anyways, but I do love the idea of co-streaming, especially as the events get more limited. Potentially the caster spots get a little more limited too. Because I do think... I also think the other thing that's weird about it is that because these things are so similar to each other, even if Roddy was like literally the most chill person in the world while he streamed, it would still be way similar to the current production value we have. It'd be very different if it was literally co-streaming for the main event. EPT Masters at DreamHack, I think is what we officially are supposed to say. Because I think that would be, you know, very helpful for some of the people who aren't going to be hired for this stuff. If they could just invite up a tree over or not and shoot the shit. Yeah. I don't know. It kind of feels like we're also... these conversations kind of start to feel like what is the literal best solution to keep StarCraft 2 pumping with content creators and content, not what is the best solution to continue having a main tournament organizer. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it used to be that we just talked about, you know, what does ESL get? What does ESL get? What does DreamHack get? What does whatever other tournaments have existed? But now the conversations are, I think, understandably shifting to how do we keep content creators? You can't burn them out by making them work for a totally different stream every single time. You have to just let them do their thing. So legitimately, as we struggle continuously throughout the year, it might be a very legitimate thing for to be like, look, it's better for Wardy to organize and stream and cast his tournaments for these 3 weeks than it is for him to be producing the ESL stream.
Yeah.
That's kind of weird.
So what you're saying is ESL needs to pull itself up by its bootstraps
Yes,
and work as hard as the rest of us,
that's true.
except Rubby.
It's very true.
Oh yeah, except for me.
True.
Yeah. But like I said, we should probably move on. Any last thoughts on EPT? Okay, no, I'm gonna take it as a no. Results were gonna be something we were gonna talk about, but I don't think it's super important. It's not even done yet. And the results are they're pretty simple now that the playoffs are in. The Swiss had some interesting things, but the playoffs haven't really been all that interesting. So let's go ahead and move on to GSL. Now we could talk about the results if you guys wanted to. Spoilers if we do. You know, if that isn't clear, it's a StarCraft 2 talk show and GSL just happened. Please don't blame me if you get spoiled. But I also just wanted to talk about kind of the recent announcements and we didn't talk at all about the Patreon when it was announced because I think it was before our last show or after our last show, I mean. So, and then they just announced, no spoilers. Can I spell crowd? There we go. They just announced that it's going to be back in studio, which is really cool. So, I guess to quickly kind of just TLDR it, GSL got cut, now has the crowdfunding that we were suspects they were going to do. I don't even think we talked about, because it's been so long since we did an episode of this, that we talked about how messed up their Patreon was and how badly executed it was. So we could talk about that if we wanted to. And then GSL happened, and because people gave a lot to the Patreon, or at least that's what they're suggesting, they are going to return StarCraft to the live studio throughout the entire tournament for GSL Season 2 this year.
Can you guys
We did it,
see
Reddit.
We did it.
what their Patreon pledges are right now?
Yeah.
Because ever since I pledged, I haven't been able
I know,
to see
it's so
the amount.
annoying. It's so annoying. I don't know when Patreon did this, but you have to literally go to an
Wait.
incognito tab.
Oh,
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can one of you just tell me what it is?
It's like 13,000.
Okay.
Yeah.
Solid.
I think it might drop off.
$18,612 Canadian per month.
Oh, well, okay. What the fuck is that? It's fucking toonies and loonies. So I think that's about what I was saying. Maybe a little bit more because GSL has been promoting it since I last checked. But it is very high. It's probably going to decrease in the off season, as well as, at least speaking personally, I did give them $30 a month because that was the replay level. And then they reduced it down to 10. And I was like, yeah, you're not getting $30 a month from me.
Yeah, you got that email, right? That they said that they were reducing the replay packs down from $30
Totally.
to $10, right? ZombieGrub? That's why you just found out about it and reduced it?
I definitely didn't find out by Reddit.
You didn't find out because they literally just silently did it like a few days after releasing or having the $30 tier and people subscribed and pledged to it?
Yeah. No, that goes back to the Patreon being handled rather poorly. You know, the fact that they got a Patreon with, like, well-translated English, and I don't mean to be rude, it just is usually when like Afrika tries to convince people, sometimes it's obvious when they're using Google Translate or like someone who's not totally fluent in English. So they got a well-written Patreon up, and they did advertise it. You know, certainly on GSL they've been advertising it, and they have a couple of rewards that just make sense. So player interviews that you didn't get because GSL downsized, and replay packs. So, but then they also made an $1,000 tier that gave you 2 free tickets to the GSL finals that were already free.
Yeah. That was the funniest thing I'd ever seen. That shit was so good. I'm not even mad about it. It's just it's the funniest shit I've ever seen.
It's pretty good.
Is the fact that it's like, the light implication is that it would actually be like a paid trip, but like not at all. Like
No.
it's literally a zero thing. And they're like, there you go. just like you asked for.
Do you think there's one of these people that pledged $1,000? One of the 3 people that did, and they're just like, "Is there any way I could get 3 tickets instead? Like, I'm with my family."
No.
No, you only paid for 2.
God.
You can for another $1,000.
Oh no, but and that's, I don't blame them for having one of those tiers that is insane, but the reward doesn't match the tier, because all Patreons have that. All Patreons have that absurd tier where they're just like, I love you if you do this. I have nothing else to offer. But it is kind of absurd that that tier isn't literally, that the GSL tickets aren't literally for all the other tiers, considering GSL tickets are free. I think the finals maybe is $5. I don't remember, but it's basically free. Or that they have any other tiers that could be incentivizing people. So, and that they took a long time to actually add in a smaller tier number. So basically, Patreon literally suggests to not do a $1 tier, because if people pay $1, they'll pay $3. So they suggest to bottom it out at $3 tiers. But they didn't even have a $5 tier, did they?
They do have. So here's the fun thing. They had the $30 tier, which I think was like the
replays.
It was either $10 or $30 was the original bottom out point or something, and it was just like very limited.
I think 10 was the bottom.
Yeah, 10 was the bottom, and then 30 was like the replay level. So I think it was like 10 for interviews, 30 for replays.
Yeah.
Then they quietly changed it. So now they have 5 as the interview, like the bottom. So $5 is for the interviews. $10 is for the replays. And here's my favorite. They didn't delete the $30 tier, which now the $30 tier is only listed as having interviews and replays. Which you get both of them at the $10 tier. So if you pledge to the $10 tier, you get interviews and replays. But the way that they have it listed as the benefits is they say $5 you get interviews, $10 you get replays. So a lot of people have been confused and think that in order to get both, you have to pledge $30.
Gotcha.
Well, no, exactly. If you want A and B, you need to get A and B.
But
instead of being like, I want A and B, because think about it, $5 tier and $10 tier, that'd be $15 normally.
Yeah. No. You need to get A and B. You can't get A and B. You need to get A and B.
I see what you're saying.
You actually you need AABB, and you need to pay for both of them twice, because that adds up $15 times 2 to $30. There you go.
I will say that the wording of it's terrible, and hopefully isn't on purpose. But Patreon does, it doesn't let you delete tiers if people are attached to it or something. So
that's the reason why, is because they don't want to delete the tier or anything.
Yeah.
But they, in my opinion, really should edit that and be like, we love you tier. Like,
they should add something else, or just be very clear that, like, hey, this is from an old tier system.
Yeah.
So that's I'm just proud of them for setting it up correctly. All right.
Honestly, yeah. We're like taking the piss, but like it's there. It's a good thing. I'm just being a shithead for its own sake. But
yeah, I don't know. There's a few things that I'm like still a little annoyed about that they clarified on the broadcast, and I'm very grateful for that. But things like, it's helping cover the prize pool.
Oh yeah.
How is it covering the prize pool? Is it when you have the prize pool for a season? Like, they've talked about this and explained this on the broadcast and stuff. But it's like, if I saw someone just say, we have a 3-season-a-year event that doesn't happen like evenly spread out throughout the year. It's not like we have 3 months, 1 month is a season, 3 months, 1 month is a season, 3 months, 1 month is a season or something. It's literally just kind of like, sometimes the seasons only have a month between them. Sometimes they have 3 months. Sometimes they have 6 months. Like, how does it work that when you say you're charging monthly, does that mean that the first season has like all the money pulled up until the first season ends, and then you have to pay out your prize money, and you're suddenly realizing like, okay, I guess just whatever money we've raised, here you go, versus is it like accumulated throughout the entire year and you're just like not going to pay out players or something? Like all of these questions just race through my mind. It's not available anywhere on the Patreon page. You have to go to the beginning of specific broadcasts where they actually explained how all this stuff worked. And even that was like, it's a little bit more of a complicated explanation, but like, I'm glad that they explained it. I'm grateful that they set up the Patreon page and everything, but the communication has been very, very much annoying me.
Yeah, that's certainly true. Yeah. Also, how have you guys felt about the speed of GSL? It's on for
It's felt fast.
Yeah, it's literally 3 weeks or something.
Yeah. GSL has always felt like a really long tournament. Like a marathon, not a sprint. This felt like this felt very short. Yeah.
Blinked and you missed it. Yeah, I was literally casting these replays too, and I still felt like I missed it. It's just so fast. Round of 16, 6 groups in total. The round of 16 and the round of 8.
Excuse you. I think you mean Code A.
Excuse me? Is that what they call the round of 16?
Am I misremembering? I thought that round of 16 was labeled.
Yeah.
I thought Code A was just the qualifiers.
Yeah, Code A. There was the one time where a best of 5 was called Code A, which was the worst thing they ever did.
Yeah,
would have been
you're probably right. You're probably
that was literally, of all of the things they've ever done in GSL, that was the worst thing they ever did. It was the worst thing they ever did. I hated it. I was so mad.
No, that was a dick move.
That was a disaster.
Yeah.
That was a fucking
And you guys
disaster.
are totally right. I'm just misremembering.
I can't believe they were like
okay.
Code A returns.
I'm upset at GSL for
that was
doing
so
that.
stupid. Anyways,
there was like 3 very exciting players that all stopped playing as much because they got beaten by like TY, Maru, and like they just got beaten by superstars, and all of them looked good. And all of them stopped playing as much afterwards. And it made me so mad. Yeah. That's my little tiny rant about that.
Yeah, also the round of 16 was not particularly exciting. There was a couple of exciting games. And then the round of 8, one of the groups was super one-sided. Incredibly obvious, too. So I like the player pool for Korea is also like, unfortunately, everything combined together is really making GSL feel like even more like a weekend tournament, even though it's weekends. I think the return to offline studio will actually help it tremendously feel different. I think that is actually necessary. I think I was talking with Wardy, and I think he probably guessed it correctly. But GSL has existed in its current format or previous format with offline studio. Because, as far as I understood it, like 6 years ago, I heard this, because it is a studio that is basically rented out regardless. Like, they are salaried. They are going to be there no matter what, for whatever they're told to do. They don't get paid because of the gig. So that means that it's better to have something happening than to not have something happening. Where if you're paying gig workers, if something didn't happen, you just save that money, right? So that's one of the reasons it's happened the way it has. And I think Wardy said they probably had better things to put on at the studio for this season and now don't. Which is why I said they seem to suggest at least that it's the Patreon crowdfunding that's, giving them the motivation to bring it to an offline studio again. But I personally don't think it's like all love and rainbows, because the crowdfunding is not supposed to go to that stuff anyways. It's supposed to go to the prize pool. So either one of two things is happening. They're making themselves look better with better PR, even though this was possible even before the crowdfunding, or the questions of where the crowdfunding is actually going have to be clarified. Because they did say it was only player prize pool. And if that crowdfunding is now going into renting out a studio, they probably should tell people that.
Yep.
Yeah.
And to be clear also on the prize pool thing, because this again was, unless you watch the broadcast, this was not really made available through just visiting the Patreon page. It's supposed to add to the prize pool. It's not even supposed to because that was the other thought I had is if they have like, let's say, I think it's like $20-some thousand prize pool or something per season, is like the amount that they're raising covering how much that prize pool normally costs, and then it kind of adds to it, or is it literally just straight up adding to it no matter what?
Right.
And the way that they described it is just straight up adding to it, and there's like a cap on how much they add to it.
Right.
And then they build up like a bank where they'll just continue to add to future GSL prize pools and stuff, which also does bring up some questions of like, if GSL doesn't happen next year, I guess the bank pockets the money. And hey, like I don't even think that's bad. I don't even think that's like too terrible or anything. That's reasonable.
Sure.
But like it does just beg some of the questions. Anyways, to my actual original point. Yeah, it shouldn't be covering the actual prize money that they would have put in. So it's not even like an indirect, now that we don't have to worry about the prize pool, we can afford the studio. It's like, no, that the way that you describe this is it's literally just not like going into your pocket at all. It's not covering any expenses for you.
Mm.
Yeah, it was described for sure as everything. It was described as 100% goes prize pool.
Yeah.
That's what it was described as initially.
So I don't mean to make it a super big drama reveal, but there's some type of smoothing over the truth or whatever you want to say that's going on. And if it's the first option, which is that they're using something they're going to do anyways, but saying now it's because you guys were so nice, that's still fine, I think, even if they never reveal it. But if it's the other thing, even though I think it would be going to a good cause, which is studio costs and production costs, they really need to say it. And then I think that's fine as well, actually. But right now, it's certainly it's a bit weird. I know Gauntlet Wizards giving them some credit, saying maybe it's because they think, once again, they've been reinvigorated with the spirit of StarCraft, that they believe that it is still worthwhile to try. That is, I guess, like an option C, but I'd be really surprised if that was the case. So, but I don't know, so I'm not trying to accuse Afrika of anything. It just is a bit weird right now.
Honestly, if it is something as simple as like, you know, they always had it available and they're just like, haha, yay, we're doing it because you're great, but actually they always had it available, I don't really care.
Right.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Optics, that's just how the game is played. That's how politics works. That's everyone will turn something that is easy into good optics if it costs you nothing. That's literally, I will give them 0 negative in terms of their social credit score. I'm not taking anything away from them for that. In fact, I might even give them a small bonus for just being like, you know what, you guys are savvy.
Yeah.
Maybe a five points to Gryffindor, you know?
Yeah. Oh, it's there's something there, but as I agree. You know, if they just said it, I'd be so much happier about it. But a little subterfuge, yeah, I guess, yeah, doesn't hurt anyone.
I'm just curious. This is like a somewhat tangential topic to the whole thing that we were discussing, but how do you guys feel about the Patreon charging in the off season and stuff like that?
Oh boy, oh geez, yeah. Patreon's charging in the off season. What a discussion. I wonder if anyone else in StarCraft does this. Anyways,
you should start.
I know what you're
referencing. Show.
I know what you're referencing, but also I feel like we could point to like 85% of content creators who have a Patreon page that also just stop for fail. Like nobody really cared. People just stayed subscribed because they're just like, I just want to support this person. But there's nothing actually happening in terms of the promises for those Patreon pledges.
Yeah. No, that is the conundrum, legitimately, though, is that you could, as a Patreon user, give all of the warnings for a year in advance even, and people still would not pay attention and would still say, I'm just supporting you anyways. It doesn't really matter to me. So, yeah, in that sense, I don't really have any qualms, but specifically for GSL, I don't have any qualms because it's all going to like a like a
Pool of
charitable
money.
thing anyways. It's a pool of prize money for very, very poor Korean players at this stage. There's other Patreons that make a lot of money that are just money on top of people that are already somewhat successful. And I'm not even really referencing Tasis and Artosis, if that wasn't clear to everyone. They do that for ASL. Because even though they make decent money, they're definitely not like millionaires. But there's people who are literal millionaires who get donations on Twitch. And you're just like, but it happens. So what are you going to do about it? Those people kind of glossing over, hey, my Patreon's monthly and not just per content. Those people I'd be really mad at.
Yeah, Dave.
Yeah, Dave.
I'm so sorry, guys. I'm so sorry that my Patreon, go ahead, look it up, my $1 million Patreon. And I'm so sorry that I haven't been consistent with my content either. You know I said that I would stream a lot, and I just haven't been doing it.
Didn't you say you're going to cover every EPT weekly region?
Yeah, what's up with that, man?
I noticed you just stopped covering every EPT region recently.
I literally haven't stopped. I've still done it. I've still done the Korean the first 2 weeks at 5 a.m.
My favorite thing recently has just been watching Dave get into like the semifinals of America, and he's literally just, and like, I swear to God, he's just sitting there and he just looks like dead in the eyes, and every 3 minutes he just kind of like looks off as like, I think I can keep going. Yeah, I'll keep going. And I was just like, oh my God, this man is defeated.
So
but
insane.
not broke. No, I'm broken, but not defeated, is what it is. I refuse to concede.
Broken,
I will
but not
let
out of
ESL win.
Oh my
They're
God.
not gonna win.
I didn't hear no
Spirit.
bell. Limps
Meanwhile,
into the
ref's
finals.
like, it's over. He's out. Somebody get this man an ambulance. And I'm like, I could do this all day. Did he start with that Rocky type accent, or is he okay?
Severe head trauma.
Yeah, severe head trauma.
Oh no. All right, so I think that says about just about does it for GSL. We could talk about like the top 4 being Terran, which is still not a spoiler for today's show, but eventually we would have to spoil GSL. I got spoiled. I actually avoided all spoilers up until the finals, especially because some jackass on Reddit was like, the blank versus blank finals is starting. And I'm like, look, okay, I don't usually complain about spoilers, but this is like, that actually is pretty dumb. All right. Like immediately after the semifinals are done and you just put the title of it, like, come on, man.
Ooh, I almost shot you a message this morning that would have spoiled who won. Oh my God.
I don't usually care about spoilers, to be fair.
Yeah. I know, that's why I was going to send a message about it.
Yeah. And I'll still cast them, and then I'll try and pretend I don't know what's happening, but
Yeah.
I do know the result. I also correctly bet it on my liquid bets, so just, it's proof. There's proof that I figured out how it
Are
happened.
they finally updating those? There's like a hot period of time where there were just no liquid bets for SC2.
There is 12
definitely matches.
at one time. 6 of them were like WTL, and then the other 6 were potential scenarios for
Yes,
GSL.
all 6 right now are just WTL. That's the only thing I see right now.
Well, now that the potential scenarios are figured out, you should only see like 3 GSL results.
Yeah.
Yeah, but there was potential scenarios beforehand, and I guess
That's cool. That makes
correctly.
sense.
I'm willing to bet that 85% of your chat doesn't know what a liquid bet is.
Stop! People don't know what the term live report thread is. God, we're all so old.
Is that when Kotaku writes an article on a League of Legends match?
Does anyone remember Hotbid? How about that guy, guys?
Is that the VTuber?
Shut up.
The real throwback would be the awkward, oh God, what was his name? The awkward interviewer that would go up to women and ask questions about destructible rocks.
No, wait, I don't know who you're talking about.
Okay, this might be too niche of a think
I thought you were going to bring up that guy that got in trouble at NASL.
I think we use the term criminal.
I do think that his content would not have flown in the modern age.
Do you remember the NASL guy who got fired after his
Edward
interview?
Starcraft, that was it. And sorry, NASL?
What, I thought it was an ASL. But it might not have
Oh,
been.
no,
It might
sorry.
be something else.
I was remembering who I was talking about.
Oh yeah, I was
think
gonna
his
say
name
that
was
doesn't sound
Edward
right.
Starcraft. Edward
No.
Starcraft. But then I was saying NASL what?
What was the interview again? Someone is gonna remember. Okay, there was an interview done at one of the old tournaments where someone
The
went into the
intern?
crowd. Yeah, he was like an intern,
The
right?
intern.
Yeah. Yes, he went to the crowd and he sat next to the only black guy in the crowd and then made mention of his race compared to the other white guys around him. And people were like, and it wasn't done well. I guess if you could make it done well. So he got fired.
Yeah. Terry
Oh,
the intern.
there you go, Terry the intern.
Terry the intern.
Oh, you could just see the visible awkwardness. Like it was like a block between them that was just labeled awkward. It was so bad.
That was
Oh.
rough. The roughest part also was like, because most of the time when a firing happens, especially if it's like a lower level employee or something, company doesn't just like out them and be like, we let go of this person. It's just like they just kind of like quietly be like,
Mhm.
yeah, like
yeah,
you
they take
stopped
them out
working
back
here.
before they put the bullet in the back of the head. Like,
And then he was like, yeah, they fired me. He outed himself. And I'm like, oh no, no one would have known.
Yeah. Oh, good times, guys. Good times.
Speaking of cringe, awkward times, does anyone remember at IPL the guy
The
who
host?
was the comedian?
Yeah.
My ex-wife, Linda. My ex-wife, Linda, I don't remember what the guy's name was, but for some reason they hired a comedian and it just did not work at all. And it was this guy just talking about how he had a terrible relationship with his wife, now ex-wife, and it was just super freaking awkward.
Oh, I thought you were
And-
going to talk about that time that Bale showed up an hour and a half late and broke the overlay, but I guess that's less cringe. We're good.
Yeah, less cringe. I don't remember this comedian, by the way. I don't know what you're talking
Really?
about. No, yeah, I have no idea.
You don't?
No.
That's like on one of like the like all-time threads of Liquipedia for like
This guy?
like memes.
I linked him in the chat.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, I remember this. That was wild.
I wanted
He
to say
looks like his
something, but-
favorite food would have been mayo.
Mayo and
That's
banana
a-
sandwich is apparently a thing.
Yeah, someone was telling me about like mayo peanut butter sandwiches when I was the other day.
Gross.
Like, okay, so peanut butter's a fat, mayo's a fat. I got nothing.
I mean, I don't care what it's made out of. I just care what it tastes like.
That's fair.
And I imagine it doesn't taste very good, but I don't know, actually.
I mean, if you give a little and you just use it to toast the bread,
Nope. No, we're moving on. We're moving on
Yep.
before somebody gets sick on broadcast, and it's me.
Yeah. What do you guys think about Lindsay Sporer?
what?
Is that the
I'm
NASL
just doing-
chick?
Yeah, the true as long as we're doing Throwback Thursdays, I guess.
Is she the woman that got hired to do the Ascended Star League just on her name?
Ascended Star League. Oh my god. That's a
By the way,
throwback also.
It was
Yeah.
the first cast I ever did.
Really?
Yeah, I did some
Ah.
late night StarCraft with Tempo. It was Soki versus some Protoss, like super late.
Does anyone remember when Lauren Elise got kicked in the head?
I thought we were referencing that.
Oh no.
That's where I thought that was
That's-
going.
Oh right. Oh my god.
Poor man, she was actually such a trooper.
She
like-
was, yeah.
She
Mhm.
was like she like really tried to embrace like nerd culture in general. Like she like really did her best, and like she obviously didn't know a ton about StarCraft 2, but she put in the work and tried to, grind it out and like make a genuine effort. And then she goes up on stage, she's doing her thing, and then who was it? I think it was a random drunk guy in the crowd came up and lifted Stefano up and did like a weird pinwheel cartwheel with him, and then his like legs like spun down like fully vertical and just domed her right on the top of the head and just absolutely knocked her to the floor. She was like standing up totally normal, and it was like someone had hit the button on one of those puppets, those wooden puppets, and she just crumpled right to the floor.
Oh my god.
And it was the most surreal thing. And everyone and she's like, oh, like, can I get like an Advil? Like, she was like making a bit of a big deal about it. And like, everyone's like, nah, you're fine. You're fine. And then you look at the replay and you're like, holy shit, she got clocked. How is she conscious right now?
There is
like,
some, yeah. Go ahead.
I was like, you look back at the early days. I know you've said this before, but you look back at the early days of esports. They were like, this was when it was great. It's like, how did anyone get away with any of this?
There's a lot of that.
Oh, that's what we need. We need Fierce Fitness to return for the EPT.
Rodan.
That's our
we had it
downtime segments.
We had it for TSL.
That's true.
Yeah.
We could do, since we're doing like 9 to 10 hour days or something, we'd literally just like every 3 hours be like, all right, guys, we are going to squat until America starts. Let's go. 1, 2, 3.
That's how I got so buff.
But you got to do like the whole skip a few things. It's like 1, 2, 99, 100, 299.
Well, now that we've done that walk through memory lane, we can actually move on topics-wise to the Microsoft buyout, guys.
Ooh.
Yeah, so Bama's going to join us for that, as well as a couple other topics we still have to talk about. But the Microsoft buying Activision Blizzard is proceeding not exactly smoothly, but good enough for our purposes, which is that the UK said no, and then the European Union said sure, and then the what is it called? The American thing.
Waiting on the FTC.
There we go. Is like, we'll say. Here we go. So yeah, it seems inevitable it's going to happen. I already believed it was inevitable just because it's talking about one of the world's largest corporations swinging their dick around. I mean, I don't mean to accuse them of doing some unethical things, but I'm sure it's happening. So I guess I am. And that they're going to force this thing out no matter how or what. So I'm happy to see that my call was correct and that it does seem inevitable.
I was saying the same thing. There's no way that Microsoft gets blocked on something like this. They're too big and powerful, like you said, and their dick is too big. It is a mighty dick when it swings.
Mm-hmm.
The gravitational pull will make sure that this deal goes through. It is a $69 billion deal. It's not getting vetoed by a couple of countries being like, but my privacy, like, monopolies. And my favorite part of the whole thing is that Britain said no, the UK said no, and EU was like, sure, right after.
This is literally why.
That was so good.
Brexit, bitch.
This is why Brexit happened, and so the UK could be like their own stick in the mud.
Yeah. Oh, it's actually it is funny, right? Because there's going to be that person who comes in and is like, I can't believe you guys are applauding monopolies and unethical things, and it's just like, these things happen all the fucking time, and it never favors me. There are, I would argue, a lot bigger issues, not just because it's just video games, but legitimately more harsh monopolies and pseudo monopolies, I guess, if you want to be super, anal about it, happen that dick us over on a daily basis and are much worse. Like fucking internet, all right, and phone companies in Canada and shit, all right. This would, I don't think, actually ruin video games. I think there's still a lot of competition out there. The cloud gaming thing, I actually am not super educated on, so I can't talk about it, but it seems like most people agree that it's a bit of a stupid argument. And then it realistically could favor me. So I'm just like, it's the 2023 late stage capitalism. I choose the billionaire who does good things for me. And I hate the billionaires who don't.
Give me Mark Cuban over Elon Musk every day of the week.
There you go. Exactly.
100%.
Absolutely.
Yep.
What do you use that Mark Cuban invests in?
Nothing, but I like that he did everything he could to make.
But you use Twitter, so theoretically,
I like everything that he did to make. Damn it! Now I forgot what insulin.
It was insulin. Yeah.
$30.
Do you use
like,
insulin?
cap it. No, but I like that people who need it won't die.
Oh, it's not
pretty
just insulin,
baller.
It's like it's a ton
Twitter
of
can
it's a ton
die.
of drugs.
Twitter can die as
Sounds
far as I
like you're
care.
not on the same wavelength as ZombieGrub, which is what favors me. I'm good with.
Well,
I
you know,
mean-
like my friend's not dying does favor me, like
Yeah, that's-
implicitly.
Yes.
Depends on which friends. Could it lead to a job opportunity?
I'm just saying,
So-
if Fear Dragon dies tomorrow, that's one more job for us.
Yeah, I mean, the thought has crossed my mind sometimes.
Oh,
If I
Jesus.
die, who comes up behind
Oh,
me?
okay. I thought you were going to say if I commonly think if ZombieGrub dies, I'll be one step closer.
No. I think
No,
we
that's
both
only on the
know that
weekend.
I'm much
Like, the
more
weekdays,
likely to
it's-
die.
Yeah. You are much more likely to die. I mean, I
Yeah.
could really make it look like an accident. Just feed
Give
you the
them
wrong
too much
stuff.
dairy.
ESL has almost made it look like an accident a few times.
That's true. Labeling things as vegan, milk-free, and then
Oh,
obviously
no.
not being milk-free.
What I'm hearing is like, so we just when we get back to the point where we're running like 3-week-long tournaments like the CS:GO Major happening right now, and they just get Fear Dragon catering, so eventually you just starve to death, even if the the
That's true.
the thing's not dairy 3.
No, I'm
Right.
actually at the point where I literally just bring my own food now to events. Like
Mm.
I fly in my suitcase out around like 15 to 16 protein bars for like a 7-day thing. So I can actually subsist off of water and protein bars for 7 days.
So you pull the
Honestly,
Korean.
I would say like
I was gonna
around
say.
80% of Katowice, I literally ate olives. ZombieGrub will back me up. I ate olives, I ate bread, and I ate protein bars.
He
for
ate
almost
basic
all of Katowice.
black olives on a plate.
Yeah.
It was gross.
Ugh.
It's gross. And
I mean,
yeah,
so-
pizza.
In fairness, Fear Dragon. So if you look at Guinness, for example, Guinness has long been marketed as like a beer for like as a meal beer because it's just so heavy.
Mm.
And like if you go to Ireland, you'll see signs that say have a Guinness for breakfast. So what I'm saying is you could eat black olives on a plate, or you just have a liquid dinner.
Actually, Guinness has less calories than a Budweiser.
Really
Really?
interesting.
Yeah.
Ah.
Yeah,
And it's tastier. So
it is tastier. It's
I
very
was gonna
dense.
say, but more flavor. Yeah.
It's very dense, but
Okay.
it's not very calorie filled.
More flavor or tastes better than a Budweiser is like a very low bar you're setting there.
I mean, at least it's not. What is it like? Is it Miller that's the that sells it on? You drink this as cold as possible, which is effectively we don't want you to taste it.
it's
is it-
Miller time.
What?
Is it Miller that's cold as the Rockies, or is it no?
It's
Coors.
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 Which I
Um,
passed
because,
by
like-
recently.
Oh, yeah, there we go.
Yeah. You can go to the Coors plant.
Fun fact: a warm Coors Light was the first beer I ever had.
Oh,
It
So
almost.
you just set
Oh.
you set such a low bar that like anything was going to be good after that.
It literally was. But however, the bar was so low that I was almost like, wow, I'm just never gonna have beer ever.
yeah.
Fortunately, I
Ooh.
did get away from that. I think it was like 15 at a high school party.
Whoa,
So
man,
it
you were
was- it
underage
was-
drinking?
Wow.
Clip it.
Whoa.
This is
No,
are we
I
within-
was
still within
in
standard statute of
Nairobi,
limitations?
where the drinking age is 13 and a half. Checkmate.
You were in Nairobi.
Atheist. Yes, I went to high
I would
school in
ask the
Nairobi.
story,
A lot
but
of
like
people
that's
don't
not
know
topical.
It's really
that.
not.
No, I'm just yeah.
To only somewhat segue from unethical things, the Microsoft buyout. If you consider underage drinking unethical, the Microsoft buyout seems to be well on its way. And what I need to rant about is the fact that it is so much better for us if Microsoft buys. People
Oh, God.
come into all these Reddit threads and all these Twitch chats, and they always are like, I don't understand why. Like, some of them are saying, I don't understand why you're advocating for monopolies, and that I understand, even though I made my point earlier about how we're all screwed anyways. But people will be like, Microsoft won't do shit for us. And yes, that is a possibility. It is a possibility. It is. But it's so unlikely, given their track record, that they would just be like, forget about it. They have a track record that is so much better than Blizzard especially, but a lot of other video game companies at this point. Even when you talk about all the sexual harassment and the workplace problems on a lot of video game companies, apparently Microsoft actually is pretty good. Now that's like, I mean, a low bar probably, but that's what I've heard. So, yeah, I think it's absurd when people don't get excited about Microsoft buying us out.
I'm going to ask if you can elaborate on some of the examples, because Age of Empires is the only one that I feel like people bring up. And here's one of the major differences. I feel like I've seen Microsoft be supportive of their games when they've been Microsoft, like either almost in-house developed, or they've just been owned by Microsoft for like literal decades. They're just Microsoft properties. I cannot think of any studios or something that Microsoft bought that is just like, besides like Bungie or something, that Microsoft is just like, we love this thing, and we're gonna pour tons of investment and time into it.
I understand the question. Does anyone have any examples before I move on?
I was gonna say, oh, go ahead, Steadfast.
Oh, of like Microsoft just generally
Of
being
what
good?
of what feardragon's talking about, that they bought a company and then invested heavily into that product.
I mean,
No,
I feel like
I don't
in
think we
fairness-
can think of one.
Oh.
Yeah, because here's my reasoning for it. I'll try to be brief about it, because I'm talking for so long today on stupid rants. I just don't. It's not that I think I'm actually a bit more on the side of like, I don't think it'll do harm. So I think, hey, like, yeah, could benefit us. There's a chance for it. But I have like very low expectations for it, because I think we have a higher likelihood of seeing any change from this deal if it goes through. If it went through tomorrow, I don't think we would see a change in StarCraft. The earliest I would imagine is like 3 to 4 years from now.
That I don't.
I have very little faith anything would happen in the near future.
So that might be correct as well, but is still in vain with it being better for us, because we know Blizzard's track record. So here's the main argument from me. We know Blizzard's track record. We know Microsoft's track record. One of them has a better track record. Now, is it a different situation? Basically, yes. It's their own game. But is it a similar situation? Also, yes. It's an old game that they continue to produce content for and pay out esports for. So they are fine with moderate returns. Blizzard is absolutely not. That is their track record. So no matter how negative you are, and you could be on the side of nothing's going to change, everything's going to suck, and I hate life, that's fine. But there is no argument to me that the chances get lower if Microsoft takes over.
And going back to feardragon's question, because someone in chat linked a list, we're forgetting some very obvious ones. They own Minecraft. Like, they have Minecon every year. They have poured so much into it, you know.
Yes.
Are we talking about esports initiatives, or are we talking about like just general games? Because general games, sure, I'm on board with.
I thought you were asking about like, oh, go ahead, ZG.
No, that's an important clarification. That is very important clarification. But that still supports the esport. So,
yes,
you know, am I miscommunicating that I expect them to come over and be like, we love the esport. Here's $1 million and $100,000 salaries for every caster because we love the esport.
Oh,
if people are taking that
deal,
I'll take it.
There we go.
If people are getting that from what I'm saying, then of course that's unrealistic. But literally, if they just say we are going to produce a co-op commander every 6 months and put it on Game Pass, that already injects so much life into the most downtrodden, distraught community that exists.
That's what they're gonna do.
Besides Nintendo games, because they're also pretty fucked over.
Oof.
Like, I think you all have probably, I saw in the show list, I think you all have probably talked about like viewership this season already, but the hope that exists if Microsoft buys it out in and of itself, it's just massive. Matt is just absolutely massive for the esport. But I think also, in fairness to feardragon's question, there has never been a buyout that comes with so much esports implications.
True.
You know, Microsoft owns ZeniMax, they own Activision Blizzard, they own a couple studios. StarCraft is literally like the OG Western esport in kind of, I don't know, round 2 of esports. There is nothing that we can compare it to say, have they supported this, have they not? Like, what have they supported? Gears of War as esport? Maybe they have, actually. They've They've been
They
running
have
Gears of
actually a
War
little bit,
tournaments.
Yes.
A little bit.
Halo,
Not
they've running
anymore,
Halo
though.
stuff, tournaments. But I don't think that there's a fair comparison we can make at all. Like, there's just it's so incomparable with this deal.
I also, looking at that list, and they're just like scanning through it. This is not a super fair evaluation or anything, but most of these games and stuff, I either feel like the ones that I've seen Microsoft throw support for in the last like 5 to 6 years that were acquired more than like a few years ago or something, or anything along those lines, like for example, Halo or Minecraft, those were massive games already. Like,
Yeah.
if anyone acquired Minecraft and then said we're not going to put money into it, like that would be a dumb business decision.
Mhm.
Like that just straight up, I wouldn't be able to understand any rationale for like that kind of thought process. As opposed to StarCraft, like
Well,
I can see rationale of why someone would look at that and be like, it doesn't seem to be like making a ton of money right now. I don't know why we would continue to invest into it.
so that's kind of most of Blizzard products right now, isn't it? Except like World
They
of
have
Warcraft.
So this
Overwatch 2,
leads me.
World of Warcraft, and Diablo 4 are like the 3 things that Blizzard is doing. And we all,
Presumably,
you know,
Diablo 4 will be a success. That's true.
This
I don't
leads
think
me
Overwatch
into-
2 is kind of.
No, it's not-
anyways.
That actually leads
So-
me into another topic, which I'm gonna say this is not what my stance is or what my belief is, but it is a thought in the back of my head. It's one of the topics that we're going to talk about, which is the Overwatch 2, not only like the PvE announcements and everything, but Blizzard themselves has finally come out and said that Overwatch 2 is not doing how they want it to. Or sorry, not Overwatch 2, like Overwatch
League, yeah.
esports.
Right.
Overwatch League. The fact that they're admitting it publicly and saying those kind of things, I feel like that to me is a potential signal. I don't know if it is. I don't know if it truly is a signal of change or anything, but it is a potential signal for change that they may actually change their approach. Not even necessarily in a way that will totally benefit us or anything. Maybe their approach is, wow, esports sucks. Let's not invest in esports anymore. That could very well be their approach, but like they have signaled a change in my mind that they are looking at Overwatch League and talking about it in a different way than they ever did before. Overwatch League was the primary suck for a lot of esports at Blizzard. And if they feel that way about Overwatch League, is there more potential for them to see value in other things like StarCraft or like StarCraft esports?
And I think, in fairness, when we talk about it, them talking about it differently, I don't know how much of that is them talking about it differently, and how much of that is them getting sued by multiple investors, forcing them to say, "Wait a minute, here we're getting sued. Like, this is a problem. In our financial disclosure, we have to say that this is not making money anymore, because otherwise we're going to be in a hole, or the outlook for it to make money, because I don't know. I don't think it never was profitable." Because at that point, then you have FCC violations if you're trying to say that you're lying to your investors about this. So, how much? Again, I don't know how much of it. I would say it's more of I would say it's more that Activision Blizzard is saying this thing is dead, and we're trying to fulfill our obligations, but this thing is clearly dead, which is the only reason they're saying something's bad, and they've been strong armed into it because they've been sued by multiple investors for those costs. So I see where you're coming from, but I think that is it. Maybe they reposition their esports investments, but anyone who looks at that and doesn't say this is doom and gloom, Overwatch League is dead in however long it takes for them to fulfill their obligations, I think is just, I don't think that's a thing.
Oh yeah, I mean it's like, I think most people have agreed it's pretty copium to think that Overwatch League was going really, really well. By
No, yeah,
any
but like,
measure.
there's maybe it's sustainable, maybe it's going to grow again, versus this thing is literally dead as soon as contracts end, unless something drastic happens, which is how I'm reading that. Because again, when a company says something's going really bad in their financial disclosures, it is, it's going to be so much worse than they're saying it is, because that's supposed to be like the positive forward-looking statement.
Yeah,
Good
totally.
point. Yeah.
I think my main thing is just that, like, I do wonder if the black hole of Overwatch League does disappear, is there that potential for things? And does that potentially, like, the removal of that black hole open up opportunities in a world even without a Microsoft buyout, is what I was kind of leading all of that into. Is like, is there a potential world where ZombieGrub was talking about, like, yeah, compare Microsoft and Blizzard, like, between these two, who do you trust more? I would still probably still say Microsoft even now. But it does kind of make me wonder, like, if I should be reevaluating the potential of Blizzard.
Mm-hmm. That's that's where I figured you were going. So
Yeah.
It's an interesting question. It just feels like the rubber band effect is kind of what I'm thinking it's going to go with, which is that they stretched it really far with Overwatch League, and the snapback is extreme. That they're going to be like, that hurt. Fuck esports. Like that rubber band hurt when it came back here.
They're gonna go full Nintendo. Yeah. In fact, no one's allowed to run esports anymore. We're gonna DMCA you if you do.
Exactly. Yeah. Not that quite bad, but basically just saying like it's a lost initiative. We can't make this work. If Microsoft wants to try, they're happy, to go for it. But that would not surprise me at all. I think, of course, biased as I am, that it would have made so much more sense to trickle in money and say, well, what's doing well here and what should we put more money into? Not, we have this chunk of money made up for this almost imaginary esport potential, and we're going to invest it into this one and ruin all of the actual game content at the same time.
Yeah. Although I did see, that was interesting. Overwatch was the official Overwatch account was streaming on Twitch yesterday, because Overwatch League's on YouTube, but I guess their World Cup's on Twitch. Which I guess qualifiers are happening because I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but BlizzCon is going to be happening in the fall, so I guess that's what that was. But it was weird seeing Overwatch streamed in official capacity on Twitch, because that hasn't happened in 4 years. Something like that?
Yes. Yeah, I think 4 years was when the YouTube deal happened. It was around COVID. So, slightly before COVID. So that is true. We talked a little bit about, last episode about how it was interesting that, Uber was talking about he doesn't, Overwatch Blue shouldn't care about Twitch. And then he also had some remarks that suggested he just also was kind of saying none of it really makes sense, which was the bigger implication. But isn't super worth diving into again. It just is the fact that Overwatch League is not doing well. And if the potential is there for them to be like, this isn't doing well, but let's go back to some of our other ideas. If that potential is there, I'd be really excited. But with the way that Blizzard is currently working, I would say that it's not going to happen.
I'm actually just remembering there was a podcast I was listening to with some League of Legends people. I think ZombieGrub, I've told you about this, with a bunch of commentators and stuff from it. I think it was either Captain Flowers or Olivie. I can never remember her name.
Olivie?
Olivie was saying apparently their behind the scenes hearings was that the sponsor fulfillment rate, which is you promise your sponsor you're going to do X number of things or something, produce X pieces of video content or whatever. Maybe you promise a particular viewership, was 7%.
Oh,
wow.
So they fulfilled 7% of their
sponsor
ad
obligations
spots and whatever.
And we don't know what the sponsor obligations were, but apparently it was okay, I'm citing this from memory of a YouTube video I watched a few days
even
ago
if it's
or
below
something.
50% Fear Dragon.
It was single digit realm.
Now, were they talking about just the LCS?
They were talking.
No, they're talking about Overwatch League. Overwatch.
Oh,
League.
okay, that makes so much more sense to me.
Yeah.
I was like, oh
Overwatch
shit, League of Legends isn't doing well.
No,
I mean, there
imagine
have been.
building a house.
70%.
And you spend $2 million to build a house, and you show up after 4 years, and you're like, wow, this is gonna be such a good house. And they're like, hey, we've started the garage. And you're like,
no, Steadfast. They have a cardboard box.
Yeah, not even.
They give you San Francisco housing. They give you a cardboard box.
Oof.
And actually,
Oh
that is
my
100% obligation. And never mind.
Dude,
jeez.
that's insane. That is insane. I love the behind the scenes stuff, man. And she doesn't get in trouble either for that.
Talk about it.
7%. Who's gonna get her in trouble?
No, exactly. It's just I heard from a person who heard from a person.
Yeah.
You can't come at me. Fuck off.
Oh, And the interesting thing, by the way, I saw she was tweeting about trying to get the LCS because they are, I don't think it's any surprise that they're struggling about trying to do away with the studio broadcast.
Yeah, that's what I saw.
And or do away with the crowd and just have maybe a small studio and which is I think is really interesting considering that has kind of been the league LCS and LEC's thing where they always have a studio broadcast. They always have fans there.
Right.
But from like the saving money perspective, I guess I don't know how much they charge for tickets, but apparently it would save a lot of money.
It's my understanding usually tickets don't even really cover all that much anyways, no matter how expensive it is.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, there was the Adam Apicella tweet thread last week, 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, that's right.
That was a really interesting thread.
That was a good thread.
Yeah, all these things are interesting. We talked a little bit about the esports woes and what could be done and what has to be changed the last episode as well, if you guys are interested. But right now, it almost feels like we're just going back to the starting point, which is that people just really like it. And so there is something there, but people have to basically entirely redo all their expectations. So in a way that still feels kind of good because the fact is there that people like esports. The fact is there that people will watch it. And the problem is monetizing it, which is a huge problem, but still. So because so many people like it and because there's a market, people will always try and do the thing, right? Someone will always try and capitalize on the market. So I think Microsoft is certainly in a position to do that. I mean, they tried to capitalize on the live streaming market and failed, but they still tried. So
they're still running Halo lands and Halo Halo Infinite. It was so incredibly DOA.
That was really unfortunate.
Right?
Apparently the handling has been very poor about Halo. Team 343 or something like that.
Yeah, 343 is
yeah.
I think the dev.
Yeah, that's really unfortunate. But they do still do the tournaments. Yeah. So yeah, Microsoft just seems like they are. They're in it to win it. They're in to win everything if they can, and they don't mind. They don't mind it when they don't win everything, and they just win a little bit. So if they make $5 million in a new Age of Empires 2 expansion instead of the $50 million that the new WoW expansion sold, or whatever it is, they're fine with that. So that's nice.
And the other, a lot of I've mentioned this before when it's come up, but like Microsoft cares about the goodwill you earn from being a good faith actor. That is a real genuine benefit that they consider because they're a smart corporation. Unlike Blizzard, who is like, it's fine if we piss off all these angel investors who do, the Overwatch thing. It's fine if we sell pre-orders for stuff like 6 years ago and then renege on our agreement and take PvE out of it and all that jazz. I know we're getting to it later, but I still have to mention it. Microsoft will actually make an effort to ensure that they have a good reputation. And something like reviving the dawn of modern esports and giving it a huge lifeline, that is really good for them. That is beneficial. They will do that for the good press.
In fairness, Steadfast, I think we need to point out that modern Microsoft cares about all these things. Phil Spencer, Microsoft, cares about all these things. There was a time in the not too recent past when Microsoft was doing the EA thing and was doing the Sony, maybe not Sony, that's not fair, but was not paying attention to these things on their gaming vertical. So
Fair
it's
enough.
nice right now, and we have a lot of reason to be really hopeful right now for all the reasons you mentioned. But that can all change, as well as it can change for the better as it has done right now. Because again, they do have that history of Microsoft games not being all that great.
I do want to add on to Steadfast's point though. It's not even the goodwill angle, which I do think is important. I think it's also one of the reasons ESL still holds on to us. So like, way to go, ESL. But for Microsoft, they also literally have something that I think benefits monetarily from having legacy games, from being the team that says we have this game on Game Pass. And in order to get certain things, you pay us $15 a month. No other corporation has that in their pocket, right? So I think that is literally already such a good thing for us, because what does a legacy game bring to the table otherwise, especially one that's gone free to play for its 1v1. Not much, but if you take $15 out of someone's pocket every month because they figure they can play StarCraft 2 co-op commander, I don't know who hasn't had a co-op commander yet, because they have Game Pass and they can play these other 4 games, they're going to do it, right? Yeah. So I think that's also just one of the big reasons why I'm very optimistic about Microsoft, is because I see that value for Game Pass in particular compared to any other modern or old-fashioned model of selling. And
then then on top of that, I would argue a lot of Dota fans are Dota fans and they're their own bubble, but like for the rest of esports fans, people are fans of their one esport, and then they're also tend to be fans of other things because they like esports. And at least for the Game Pass side of things, like if you get StarCraft, you also get every champion in League of Legends, and you get a ton of stuff for Valorant, and you get all these other things. So like, not only is it just all these games, it's people that follow all these esports. They kind of, at least in my experience, they tend to feed into other esports. So it's a value proposition as an esports fan, not just as a regular gaming fan, which I think is, I don't know, I think that adds a certain type of person.
Yeah.
Maybe that's just me.
Any other thoughts? Or move on from the Microsoft. Please save us. You're our only hope.
Please, Microsoft. That's it. That Microsoft, please save us. You're our only hope. That's my thoughts.
Please, Phil Spencer.
Yeah.
Make me happy.
Yeah. I really liked what feardragon brought up, though. I mean, I would love it if Blizzard was literally like, yeah, we fucking screwed up. Let's go back to basics. Because I think we are the basic one. We are the cheap tournament. We're 1v1. Don't you have to bring 5 or 6 computers? 12.
Yeah.
10 or 12.
That's why they included us in the BlizzCon trailer.
WCS Challenger. True.
I mean,
we're in the trailer twice, apparently.
I mean, realistically,
No.
that's a better argument.
No,
That's
we're
why
not.
we're in the
There
Gamers
is-
Without Borders.
There is a shot of the Anaheim Convention Center where
Right.
there's a StarCraft banner hanging.
I
and
saw
you
that
can
one.
See the StarCraft thing there. The second one is someone has a backpack that has a Nova pin on it.
Oh, but is it a Heroes of the
is in the
Storm?
shot.
Is it Heroes of the Storm, Nova?
That's a good question, though.
I think it
We'll
probably
never
is.
know.
Probably
Never
is.
know. Probably is, but
Yeah.
If you would like, you can support at the highest tier of Patreon for the 4-hour Rubby breakdown of a frame-by-frame trailer breakdown. Now, that comes at the very inexpensive cost of $7,200, but I assure you, it is worth it if you want to give us all money.
dude,
Like
if you
Steadfast, that
pay for my
implies-
alcohol for the night, I'll do it for free.
But no, Steadfast, that implies he's doing it every month to make that $7,200.
I just have a really long off season of a couple of years, Bill. I'll do it like every 11 months.
Okay.
So there'll be like, 11-month off season and then, a new BlizzCon trailer and I'll do it again.
It's like those YouTubes that get away with like one video every 2 months, but they get like 500,000 views or 500 million views.
That's the dream.
Yeah.
the dream, yeah.
Anyways,
Rubber.
sorry. Any other words? I don't know. Beomulf, were you saying something? I don't know if it was.
Oh, no.
Okay. So yeah, I just it's what I'm looking forward to. But now we can talk about the BlizzCon announcement. That was up on the list. So
Good segue for your dragon.
yeah,
I don't
excellent
actually have too
segue.
much to say. Is there that much to say?
No,
Like,
no,
okay.
not really. But I do
Yeah.
want to say a couple of things, which is that one, BlizzCon was announced without a lot of sports, esports and video games really getting anything. So that teaser was actually just World of Warcraft,
Yeah.
wasn't it?
There was no Overwatch League there too. You're right.
Right, yeah, there was barely anything. There was mostly World of Warcraft, and then there was a little bit of Diablo. Now, World of Warcraft always made the most sense for BlizzCon because obviously that social factor, the guilds coming together, right, always made a lot of sense. So I've never been, one to accuse World of Warcraft of taking up too much space. They deserve the
Also,
space
like
they get.
80% of BlizzCon attendees were there for World of Warcraft.
Exactly. Yeah, that's totally fine. But usually they do throw at every other, title that they have a bone. And often because their other titles were doing totally fine. So I know we like to talk about StarCraft a lot because woe is us, and woe is us for sure. But Hearthstone was absolutely a cash cow, king of the card battles, and making tons of money by selling decks. And then Blizzard literally gutted it, like kind of on purpose, but not really. It's like they were driving while texting. So you do blame them for running over a pedestrian, but they didn't exactly do it on purpose. That is Blizzard and Hearthstone. It is mind-boggling that they just completely screwed that up. And then, of course, there was the Storm, which wasn't nearly as much of a cash cow, but I assume did make money because it is still getting content. That mentioned. And then, yeah, StarCraft could have had some money. I mean, we could have contributed, but they won't let us. So instead of just throwing us a bone, it's literally just going to be a World of Warcraft event with Diablo 4 released.
I'm going to paint a different picture. If this trailer, I am like 89% confident that if they had released the trailer and they had a StarCraft bit or something and like Hearthstone bit and everything, I think more people, or the same number of people or more people, would have been annoyed because we all know that nothing's happening with StarCraft related.
Okay. By the way, just a little bit of context, talking about things happening or not. I have the Blizzard news page open because I was looking for stuff, and you have the Blizz. So they have a sequence of like categories, as most news pages do, and you have BlizzCon. Hey, BlizzCon's happening. That's the news category, and you have one for World of Warcraft. It says World of Warcraft is the same announcement, and it is only tagged under those two things. It's not tagged. It's not even tagged under Diablo. So just adding more credence to what ZombieGrub is saying. But yeah, no, it's feardragon. I agree with you. Yeah, I mean, I feel like if they showed StarCraft, you'd have a subsection of the population that's like, they don't hate us, we're still alive, and then they get disappointed later on. But a brief burst of happiness.
Well,
it does beg the question: when you're on death row, do you want the hope of a reprieve from the governor, or would you rather just live hopelessly for that whole time?
So here's my perspective, right? It's not that I expect them to love all their children equally, because one child gives them, houses on a day-to-day basis, and other children ask for houses. It's that they used to be a company that said, we just love everything. We love all the video games, and we love you guys for loving the video games. So they could include StarCraft, and the StarCraft 2 esports fans would be like frothing at the mouth and then disappointed when nothing actually came out of it. But you could also, if you're a reasonable person, in my opinion, say, at least they still like that they have their video games, instead of seemingly trying to brush them aside and be like, nope, just push that face right on over there. It's not in the picture anymore. Fuck off.
And
that's what's confusing. That's what's disappointing.
And like old Blizzard would have done that. They would have put an Easter egg to like Lost Vikings or something, or not Lost Vikings, but no, yeah, Lost Vikings, like the original game in there. They would, like old Blizzard was very proud of even their smaller stuff and would like make reference to it and proud of their history.
Yeah.
And so,
yeah.
Now that we don't get that, now we just get Bobby Kotick.
BlizzCon really did feel very special because, it was a unique thing, the video game company convention. It was huge. And it just felt like it was, everyone was there for a good time, even when they did stupid shit, like, don't you all have phones? All right, that guy got a lot of shit for that, but, I think he just really liked video games and he just was nervous. But now it just feels like, they're just doing it because they're expected to. And that the only thing that they think they have at this point is Overwatch. Not even Overwatch, sorry, World of Warcraft. Like, they're even pushing Overwatch out of the picture. They're like, yeah, just like forget that. And that didn't happen.
Just such a, like, regardless of how you feel about Overwatch and Overwatch 2 and whatever, the IP of Overwatch was so good.
It was.
Like, oh man, I'm still mad that they didn't pull an Arcane, or they didn't pull whatever the Dota anime was. Like,
no, yeah,
I would watch that.
They were literally the first, right? Like, I think people give a lot of credit.
I would have played World of Overwatch. I would have played World of Overwatch
hell yeah.
for sure.
People give
StarCraft Ghost reskinned.
Valorant a lot of credit, I think, for like the diverse nature of the characters. Like, they all come from different backgrounds and different locations, literally, and are all different types of people. But Overwatch did that first. Overwatch is doing a great job of tying together not just video games and esports, but also like the fandom that goes along with it. So tons of fan art, tons of fan-made creations. a lot of interest in the actual story, things that people remember far past the point of their casual competitive mode. Because as much as we're esports people, like that's usually more temporary than people who I don't fondly go back to Mass Effect after the Legendary Edition's released, right? But instead, they're just like, well, the head honcho said that we have to be PvP primary. So we're going to have to push off all this PvE shit. We're going to have to push off all of these cinematics. And anything going that way is now suddenly on the back burner. Which I just think is so weird. Because they could have been League of Legends with the Netflix thing. Or they could have done, what Valorant does. And now captures the artistic part of things where people are really excited to see the new character, but also the new cinematic that comes out with that character. And if they do drop hints about comics or something, Valorant people are all over it. But the worst part about it is that at least Valorant set the expectations off the bat that they are mostly like a PvP thing. And the PvE is just like trickle, like it just fed to the people every now and again. Overwatch kind of came out as if it was supposed to be both. And then they just completely disregarded one side of it, which is crazy. It is insane to me as someone who is very interested in that part of the game. I would have bought an Overwatch 2 if there was more story to it.
And the crazy thing you talk about as well with like, okay, Valorant now is really getting that the cinematic piece. I was like back in 2012 or something, I was not a Blizzard fan. I got into StarCraft in 2013. If there was one thing that I always knew about Blizzard was that their cinematics were movie quality. Like they would do the best thing ever. Like their storytelling. As someone who was not even really much of a video game fan, I did not have a computer that allowed me to play video games. That was Blizzard's reputation even more than anything else. And like the first thing that they let go is just, again, it's insane.
Yeah.
Like that someone was able to capture so much market dominance.
It's cray.
They made you feel things too.
I don't know about that. I don't feel things.
Cool. They made me feel things.
They made me feel things.
They made me feel things. Like I remember the Blizzard storytelling, Blizzard cinematics used to be something special. There used to be a real soul at Blizzard. Like you felt it. You felt the passion bleed through. It was beautiful. And now it's a fucking joke. It's a fucking joke what they've done. They have actually ripped their own soul out. It happened a long time ago, but we're seeing the effect of it now. And it makes me so sad and angry. And that's why I always get so heated about this, is because it used to be so beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
And now it is actually a parody of itself.
Yeah. And to be super clear, it's not that they were actually magical rainbows and unicorns. There's always been problems. They are, definitely also... You can also criticize them for everything else that the video game industry is criticized for. They overworked very passionate people and did not give them, due credit, due hours, due money. But there is absolutely good people there. And the point got to a point where not only were the conditions were kind of the typical video game shitty, but then there wasn't that special factor. So a lot of their talent would leave by force or by, just their own free will. And then it became very much the same crappy workspace and all the crappy habits and all that, and completely soulless, So just to clear that up before anyone accuses us of, dick sucking a major corporation.
Although in fairness, that's actually kind of look at all the spin-offs we have right now. We have whatever the studio is called that made Marvel Snap.
Yeah.
We have Frost Giant. We have whatever David Kim's studio is.
Dreamhaven.
And
there is whatever company that actually just got a studio that just got announced that calls their devs chefs. Do you know what I'm talking about?
No.
Yeah, it's another Blizzard spinoff.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but we've had that happen in the past. And there was like the Diablo FPS thing, that the London, whatever it was called, that failed. That wasn't great. But
Hellgate London.
Yeah, thank you, Hellgate London. But I don't know that we've seen such now that we're seeing like the heads of significant departments now forming up their own stuff. So, well, it sucks. You know, the flip side of the coin is we have 5 or 6 what we hope to be really, and we've seen, you know, from Marvel Snap, really good studios popping up instead of just Blizzard by itself. So, yeah, it sucks that Blizzard's dying, but if that pops up 6-fold more awesome things, then I guess technically it's a good thing, even if it kind of makes us very sad in the middle term.
It does, because all the stories would be
Yeah.
gone. You know, you couldn't use those
That's fair.
universes, which is still a lot to be explored. And here's the other thing that really bothers me is, you know, since we're ranting about stuff, so many people are like, what do they even do with a Warcraft 4? What do they even do with a StarCraft 3? The stories have already been told. And I'm like, it's a literal different universe. Like, you could go micro, you could go macro, you could focus on one thing versus another. You could create a whole new giant alien octopus that's attacking the world. It doesn't fucking matter. All right. 1, because they'll still make money, and 2, because it's all about the story writing anyways. So even the blandest and most cliche of stories can still be told very well.
There's also a lot of untold threads on
Yes.
StarCraft.
Oh, yeah.
Neandra.
One of my-
Neandra and her ship of Protoss Zerg
Yeah,
weird super
just
shit. I want to see
Flew
that.
off as she took off over an entire Protoss like generation and effectively created like a Zerg Protoss hybrids question mark.
Yes.
There's the whole fact that you basically don't hear anything about the original Terran faction and stuff that came from Earth, like the UED, is
UED.
just like
Yeah.
just like, hey,
Yep.
there was this massive faction that the entire thing in StarCraft 1 was that every other Terran you'd seen up until that point was basically like scavengers on the outskirts of space. And then like a small scouting party comes in from the original thing and are just like absolute badasses because in comparison, it's like a literal freaking fleet that's very difficult to put up with. Imagine if you would then go back and be like, yeah, oh, this old like Terran colony and stuff discovers that there is all of these other races out there that have been waging war and like Tal'Darim and everything. It's like maybe they don't play so nice with everyone. Like there's so many cool things they could do with that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I would love like a genesis of humans leaving Terra or leaving Earth, like original Terrans.
Mhm.
And you could do like a homeworld type game. That'd be super cool.
Mm.
I'd like to see that we go back to our galaxy and we find out that the reason that the UED hasn't sent anything is because shit's real fucked up.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden Earth is in trouble and we're actually having to defend Earth. Now we're invested again because it's literally us.
Yeah.
How about that?
Somehow Amon has returned.
No.
Please no. Please no.
A chill run across everyone's spine. They hear the laugh of Amon.
Oh God. But it's seriously though, like
Only
you,
if they announce it in Fortnite.
because people will actually shut down that train as well when you're like the UED and what happened with Earth, and people will be like, well, if you just focus on Earth, then how do Protoss and Zerg come in? Because they were only found once they escaped Earth, and it's like. It's been a couple of years. We don't know what's happening on Earth. Boom! Suddenly, a whole new
Zerg is
Zerg faction and Protoss faction. Like, oh,
literally
who'd have
a
thought?
swarm that wants to like eat the universe.
Yeah.
Oh my God. The
Lead
Zerg,
other sectors.
the Protoss ship that got taken over by the Queen, goes to Earth.
Dude, why not?
There we
It's like
go.
all of these are possibilities. And even if you were looking at the last possibility that sucked balls, it's just like it's the most terrible idea ever. If it was a strong IP like StarCraft and they slapped StarCraft 3 on the fucking label, people would buy it and rate it negatively, but they would still buy it because that's what people do. That's what video game companies do. They
I mean,
produce shit and then they're like, the next shit will be better, and then it's shit, and then people still buy it.
I mean, I see 4 people right now that would buy it.
I would buy it. It'd be like,
Yeah.
the story's absolute shit and the game sucks. But God, for a minute there, I was really hopeful.
Yeah, but like, you know, then they'd have a bunch of StarCraft 3 esports, so we don't have much of a choice in the matter. But anyways,
No, that really grinds my gears, honestly. Like, it just, like, that's the stopping point for anything in ever to exist, is that there's not enough story to tell.
yeah. And like, in fairness, StarCraft is a little more limited in what they can do because you do want to have the 3 iconic races, and that does need maybe a little more creativity. Warcraft 4, like, you have, what is it, Azeroth. You could...
And everything else at this point. Like,
Yeah, like there's
Yeah.
if you want to have the factions, they're there everywhere. Like that is not it doesn't you don't have to do the whole you all meet in a tavern because you're going on an adventure like D&D trope. You have an entire world of interactions where you don't have to find some reason that these three alien races find the one sector and they interact. You have everything.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm tired of seeing that one. I'm tired of seeing that one.
Yeah.
I'm sure none of you fine folk in the Twitch chat are those people.
If you are, don't talk.
Yeah.
Actually, do talk. Tell us what we're wrong.
Yeah, I guess if you
YouTube comments.
If you think we're wrong. But anyways, it's totally possible, and I think at the end of the day, it is absurd that Blizzard thought that there was apparently thinks that there is no money to be made or not enough money to be made in such a powerful brand that is StarCraft, that they literally shut down a StarCraft first-person shooter in 2018. That blows my mind. Because people kind of forget about that. I feel like every time I bring up the FPS StarCraft, they think of the Nova game. And I'm like, no, they literally released a full development team that was working on an FPS out of nowhere. The people interviewed said, like, that was weird.
I do wonder.
Go for your dragon.
I do wonder about some of that stuff though, where it's like, there is one other reason besides just I don't think this will make buttloads of money, why they might make some of those decisions, which is they got into development and just like weren't seeing that the game was coming together how they wanted to. Like it literally just wasn't looking like it was gonna be a good game.
Well,
that's also another, because Blizzard is also like famous for, more so than even many other game studios, spinning up projects and teams where they're like, we're going to start it on a game. And then just like after a certain period of time, be like, no, this doesn't feel like it's coming together, and just shut it down. Two
things. They were known as that company. So that was StarCraft Ghost. They didn't think it was good. Maybe. And so they shut it down. Second of all, that still doesn't contribute. That doesn't prove that they still are actually kind of secretly holding on to the StarCraft idea. Like, hey, we should probably use this IP. Because at the very least, after Nova got shut down, they started work on StarCraft 2. So they still saw potential from that universe. So, okay, maybe they do shut down another FPS because it, again, sucks balls. But are you going to tell me that they can't do their new game, the survival one that they're kind of hinting at with the StarCraft world, and say, it's StarCraft, so come buy it, you StarCraft fans? They could have. They want a new IP, and that's also fine. But it really does scream that they legitimately just don't see value in StarCraft as a universe, as a thing.
Okay, so this is a big stretch, and tell me if I'm like really rubber banding this too hard. So StarCraft, or like StarCraft and Warcraft, they became their own IPs because Blizzard wanted to work with what is it? Not a Creative Assembly, with Warhammer and Warhammer 40K, whatever company in the Games Workshop. And then they said, no, you can't do that because it used to be that they would not license that IP. So we got StarCraft and Warcraft. And the correlation I'm making here is, first of all, like apparently a significant number of casters, they play one or the other. I mean, In Control did. We have Kalaris now. But more importantly, 40K used to be the big game and has been dropping in popularity pretty significantly across both the tabletop game and in terms of like the video games that they're coming out. Although like, Space Marine 2 is coming out. In comparison, Warhammer, the fantasy game, has been going up and up and up and up. It is by far the more popular tabletop game now. Total War 3 or Total War Warhammer 3 is incredibly popular, going off all over the place. And I'm wondering whether because we said Blizzard doesn't really see much in this IP. I'm wondering whether just Blizzard in general is saying, we don't know how we feel about like this kind of grimdark, this gritty sci-fi setting. We don't know that there's necessarily a market, an appetite for that, as much as there maybe is for other things. And they're taking this from, again, Warhammer going down and maybe seeing more fantasy. This might be too much of a stretch. And in fact, it probably is. But I wonder whether that is, like, ideas like that are kind of what is influencing this. Because clearly, I mean, the War Chest was making money. Like, if we look at it just on StarCraft's performance, I think that decision doesn't make a ton of sense.
No, that's actually a very interesting point that I haven't heard before. Because a lot of people bring up, well, they're not going to make another RTS because RTS genre isn't doing so well.
Yeah.
But I've never heard someone bring up that the core theme or art direction or whatever you want to say about StarCraft is actually what is not viable or not not popular right now. And that is pretty interesting. I mean, certainly we know that RTS does well with cartoony. More cartoony is better for RTS. I personally think that's a fact. And before the Age of Empire guys get out of me, but I think it's a fact. So that's what Stormgate could be doing it. But then there certainly is an argument that I see other people make that Stormgate's also making it a bit more cartoony because that is what's in, right? Not the realistic grittiness. So that it's an interesting angle. I had not thought about that. But it could be a factor because imagine they make StarCraft and they say they do all their market research and they're like, well, we need this to be unicorns and balloons and rainbows. And then it's just like, why even bother with StarCraft anymore? So that could be very legitimate.
You're reminding me that I almost didn't buy StarCraft because of how cartoony the graphics looked.
Wow.
I almost
there you
didn't
go.
buy StarCraft 2 because the graphics looked so cartoony compared to Brood War.
Is this
I
when
was,
we?
I was like extremely turned off by it.
That's super interesting.
Huh? Is this when we address everyone that's like talking about how they don't like Stormgate because the graphics are too cartoony? Even though we
Yeah,
have, like nothing.
that's what I
we
was
just have
talking about.
Concept art.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Should we move on or like I don't want to.
Sure, yeah.
I just it feels like we've been.
Just
Eating a fed
responding.
horse.
Yeah.
I mean, the horse is very dead. We know it's dead. It's been dead since.
To bring it back,
been
though,
dead for a while.
Steadfast, you were talking
Yeah.
about BlizzCon, and I feel
Mhm.
like an important thing to mention is that you kept saying that BlizzCon had a soul, and I want to say we don't say that anymore. BlizzCon has spirit.
Oh.
So glad you added the
no.
drum effect.
No, Ravi. Fear Dragon does not have spirit because it will not be a StarCraft 2 tournament.
Yeah, it doesn't have anything.
Spirit will not be there.
What's a World of Warcraft's
Had
pro
a
gamer?
spirit. Had a spirit.
Except he never played in a BlizzCon.
BlizzCon. He did not.
No.
So never had a spirit.
Was he there for one of the summits?
Probably. Maybe.
I think he was.
To be brutally honest, he wasn't really super well known back when they were having summits. But I do kind of remember something.
I vaguely remember him hanging out with like a laser and a bunch
Mm.
of other people and them hitting the gym and stuff. But
Yeah.
I may be mixing it up.
Yeah, I don't know. Because the last summit was 2018, wasn't it? Well, 2019 was like a summit, but like not really.
Summit.
They didn't fly anyone out for that one. They was just like, if you're here, feel free to join us.
To sum it all up, we're leaving.
Okay. So Overwatch 2 PvE problems, just to go over the big news of the video game community that is also related to Blizzard. We've alluded to it like a billion times in this episode, but if you haven't heard, Overwatch 2 PvE has been, we can say severely cut down, okay? Because apparently they're still planning on some, but the original intent of it being a very elaborate, replayable PvE is now gone. So big deals like the talent trees are gone, but then other people were talking about how the replayability is gone. The idea of like 200 plus levels or something, I forget exactly, but that's the talk of the town. Is that Overwatch 2 was literally released to accommodate PvE. So if you don't know the history, here's a quick TLDR. Overwatch 1 comes out and they have all of the cinematics and they have the cool stories and people are really excited for potential PvE. They say they're working on it, but they never get around to it. Eventually, they straight up admit that the system cannot actually like incorporate PvE and whatever programmer mumbo jumbo they use for that. But they basically said this game as itself cannot accommodate PvE. So they said, we're going to make a new game. We're going to make Overwatch 2. And the main reason is because it's going to come out for PvE, because we'll create a whole new system to accommodate. So they released Overwatch 2 amongst many people's confusion because it looks like the exact same game, just 5v5 instead of 6v6. It forces people to buy it again. There's conspiracy theories that the reason they did this was that they no longer had to be held to the contracts of the Overwatch 1, which is that you would get all new heroes for free if you bought the game. You wouldn't have to pay for new heroes. Overwatch 2, now you do. So there's also that conspiracy theory there. But primarily, PvE was the goal. So they say, we're working on it. They literally stopped working on Overwatch 1 for about 4 years to prepare for Overwatch 2 and the PvE and the PvP. And then about a week ago, they came out and said, it's neutered. Like, it's not really going to happen. they almost hide it is another reason why people were really upset, is because they were kind of talking about Overwatch and they were like, blah, 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 Overwatch, blah, 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 Overwatch. By the way, PvE is not really going to happen. But anyways, Overwatch. And people were like, So people are very upset because this is literally what the Overwatch 2 is supposed to be for. This is why people bought a fucking new game that was exactly like the first game, and why they, dealt with not having updates in the first game for 3 or 4 years. So it's a big fuck up. And hold on, one more thing, Beomulf.
Right.
Sorry, because someone brought this up because they were like, wasn't Overwatch also a failed idea? It was called Titan back then. Titan was supposed to be a MMO, I believe, another MMO actually, and it was supposed to be like a shooter or something, and it failed. So they made it into Overwatch, which is a great turnaround. I am of the full belief that Overwatch 1 was a great game, but they meant it to be PvE as well, and they couldn't incorporate it. They couldn't do it. They turned it into Overwatch, which also couldn't do PvE. They promised PvE for Overwatch 2, and they can't do it again. So literally, Overwatch 2 is just or Overwatch in general is just the story of failure. We're trying to make PvE happen. Now I'll let anyone else talk.
I think the most interesting take I've seen about this is that the PvE idea for Overwatch was tied to, or tied to basic Overwatch 2, right? It was not tied to the battle passes, and this new PvE format that they're going to be going for ties PvE content directly to battle pass performance. So the take that I've seen that I think is interesting, and it wouldn't surprise me if it's true, is well, okay, you buy Overwatch, yeah, you still have to buy Overwatch 2, right? It's not totally free to. Did they make that free to play? I'm forgetting.
No, you have to buy it, don't you?
Yeah, because a whole bunch of people did pre-orders for it. That's part of the reason why it's almost criminal.
Yeah. So you buy Overwatch 2, and I can just install it. I haven't bought it. Apparently, I don't know. I could have sworn they made Overwatch 2 PvE. Whatever it is, that is a one-time purchase. And PvE content was not going to be, in their mind, was not going to drive them consistent income. So instead, we're going to tie it to seasonal battle passes, and you're going to be able to do stuff for your battle passes. You're not going to have long-term progression because we want more of your money. And what I think is most interesting about this is that this PvE content model is very similar. This replayability, whatever, is very similar to the most successful monetization of StarCraft we had, which is co-op commanders. Yeah. And at the time, and we see again, this is a topic for a little bit later, but Stormgate is going to have a very big focus on that because they saw the numbers and they said this is really worth doing. This drives such a percentage of our income and our player base. And Blizzard looked at the same idea and said it's not worth it at all. We're going to cut this. We're going to tie it to battle passes. We don't want anything like that, which is such an interesting, again, former Blizzard, current Blizzard, such an interesting divergence of takes.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know what to make about it, but I think it's worth pointing out.
Yeah. That's very important to point out because Overwatch 2 is free. But in order to get all of the next commanders and skins and stuff is the battle pass, which isn't exactly different from a lot of other games. So that's not truly worth fighting over. But I think the implication was that it was going to be attached to these battle passes, and now that's not even true. So, whoops. There you go.
I think the thing I've seen is the new one is going to be overly tied to battle passes, and I guess the other one you'd be able to buy just in missions. I don't know what the monetization was, but there's something with it it's going to be overly incentivized for battle passes now or something like that.
Yeah. No, that's a. I'm not completely sure about that, but I do know that people definitely feel ripped off. So there is some monetary there. If it was literally you get this game for free, by the way, it's no longer PvE. Disappointment would still be very understandable because they also screwed over so much of Overwatch 1 to begin with. They stopped updating it. They stopped releasing heroes for it because they said it was going to be in Overwatch 2. But if there was no other, I think, monetary swaparoo, right? Underhanded things, then I think people wouldn't be as upset. So I know there's something there, but I definitely need to do more research on it.
To be positive, it came out and told us. They could have just kept hiding it for even longer.
That's true. That is true. That's a good point. Yeah, I'd give them some credit. Yeah, it's all over the news. Literally, I just Googled Overwatch 2, and the first Google question answer thingy was, why did they cancel PvE? And this is like week old news. It just shot up on Google. So if you do want to look more into it, feel free. But it's yet another example of Blizzard definitely not being the Blizzard that we know, and of them way over focusing on PvP too, IMO, when PvE is definitely a reason to it's a whole other market. I mean, literally some of the comments I was reading on the gaming Reddit thread were people very realistically talking about how they're old. All right, they got kids, they got jobs. And to log in to play 2 5v5s with a bunch of people calling you like, dick and whatever, it's just not what they want to do anymore. But they still want to play a fun arena shooter. So what do? Well, PvE would have been the perfect solution. But now it's going to be really gutted and not nearly as fun. Or not nearly as replayable. It's apparently one of the big issues. It's not really going to be a campaign. It's going to be kind of just like the sprinkling of the seasonal stuff that they do. Yeah, I mean, as I said, for me, I would have bought it if there was a decent PvE. But now I'm very happy I never put any more money into Overwatch after 2017.
It's
like the funny thing is,
ironic.
Is it
Sorry,
feardragon?
Oh no, I was just gonna say it's hilariously ironic that as esports bubble is shrinking, Blizzard is like doubling down on PvP.
No, you're right. You're right. That is
well,
funny.
no, I think they're just. I think it's just more that I think this is going back to what we were talking about previously. I think this is just another marker that Blizzard is very interested in letting Overwatch die.
That too.
We had the financial the financial not displacement, the financial statement that said, Overwatch League is not making money. We don't really see a path for this to make any money anymore. We're going to try to redo this, but be forewarned because they were, sued. And now they're saying, well, actually, yeah, we're gutting half the game that we were promised to ship. So, and on top of that, like, it's not going to be, it wasn't really much in the BlizzCon
teaser.
The BlizzCon announcement. Yeah, there we go. So I'm putting all this together. I'm like, Activision Blizzard seems very close to doing what they've done with Heroes of the Storm and StarCraft and everything else, where they're just letting it die, and they're just doing maybe they're letting it die a little bit clumsier than they did with StarCraft, but
they're letting it die in the sense of unloading a full clip into it at point blank range.
Okay. Steadfast. Yeah, but like at least it's not a tank round. Like it's a little bit of a slower death.
They
here,
don't
okay?
have enough money for a tank round anymore.
That's fair.
You can't throw it, there's basically like 16 people standing in front of Overwatch that, you'd be killing as well if you actually unloaded the clip. And that is the team investors who are still expecting something. So if Blizzard literally was like, we're just going to cut everything and you're on your own, I'm pretty sure they'd be liable for a lot of fucking shit after that. I mean, they're already getting fucked by that anyways. But then if they were just literally like, yeah, we're done, goodbye. I mean, I can't imagine what would happen with all the investors, because those investors, they had money to spare, actually, which is absurd to think about, that they bought in for millions and millions of dollars because they were already millionaires and billionaires. And so if you screw them over, they're going to have money to still fuck you up, right? Like that's
again, they're currently suing. I don't know what the status is, but I know at one point they were like suing Blizzard for failure to meet terms.
Yeah,
this is what the Microsoft BIOS for.
Hey.
Well, yeah, right.
Hey, Microsoft buys your IP and also buys all your debt.
Wow, that would be sucky. But you can't buy you can't be. I mean, can they actually be sued? They can't, right? That is actually legitimate. If people are suing Activision Blizzard and Microsoft buys them, the suits,
the suits they're still liable.
Yeah,
really?
You're when you purchase a company, you purchase all assets and liabilities.
Yep. Microsoft would be on the hook. Yeah.
I guess when liabilities, I always thought of just like monetary things. Like okay. Let me ask this: are they on the hook for like the sexual harassment stuff?
No.
Yeah.
I don't think so.
Okay.
It'll depend a lot, but like those are going to be like, those are probably going to be more,
I don't know, wouldn't they?
Yeah, I think they would, right?
That's what I'm asking.
But those are individuals acting.
But like the Activision Blizzard subsidiary of Microsoft would be liable, not Microsoft as a whole.
I think it's important that we should all say that none of us, except for Steadfast, are a lawyer here. So
yes,
none of us should take our words with a grain of salt. Steadfast, you should hold them legally accountable.
Yeah.
Plus,
yeah.
it's like-
but I'm Canadian, so it doesn't count.
Wait,
we have
Fear Dragon-
different laws up here.
Twitch
They're
Prime
like
sub
maritime laws.
received. Thank you for appeasing the
Does this mean that we
overlord.
have to pay Steadfast like $100 every 6 minutes to appear on this at this point? If he is that lawyer?
Yeah, I've been running up a tally this whole time. It's getting really exorbitant. I'm gonna be able to afford a house sometime in the next 30 to 40 years.
Yeah.
Totally.
30 to 40.
Toronto real estate.
Yeah, good luck. No, I don't know anything about this. So it doesn't sound right to me that Microsoft is then fighting on the sexual harassment stuff that happened at Blizzard. But
Well,
I don't know.
I mean, on the flip side, if it's not fair for it's not right for the victims if all of a sudden the company gets bought out, so they no longer have any restitution.
No, I agree with that too, but I know that actually does happen, doesn't it? Because okay, not this specific scenario, but I've seen media, I've seen television shows, where you guys ever watch Winning Time?
No idea what that is.
Okay,
The which?
it's on HBO Max. It's the story of the Lakers. Anyways, the guy's broke. He's dead broke, and he's basically telling these people that he's going to pay them off of false promises. And then he gives all of his assets to his wife so that when they go to sue him, he's like, "I'm bankrupt. You can't do anything."
That's different though.
Of course it's different.
yeah.
Like, I can understand
yeah.
that much. But
Yeah.
I would have figured it was similar, like, kind of train of thought, which is that if you can pass the buck as it is, like, there's got to be some form of, like, okay, can the buck be passed? Can it not? Like, I don't know the legality of everything.
And a man can't be forced to vote against his wife. So
To
Yeah,
testify,
once again,
to
mar-
testify
mar-
against his wife.
He's trying to, like, quote Arrested Development. Like, he can't be tried for the same crime as their husband. He's like, that's not
Something
true.
like that.
I have the worst
Yeah.
fucking lawyers.
Um,
Oh man, Barry Zuckercorn, absolute legend.
My quick Googling and not being a lawyer says that if you buy a business with a pending lawsuit, like, then you're still on the hook for
yeah,
that.
Okay.
that makes sense. That makes
Yeah.
sense.
All right.
Yeah. The only thing is, would it be a different thing for sponsorship obligations versus like a civil suit? Is
Sure.
the question.
I would imagine
think-
it's
So one of those
I would
is,
hope
like,
it's the same,
contracts,
but I
the other
also
one's
would
a
hope
civil
that
suit.
that corporations don't actually have the same rights as humans, which in many cases they have more.
Citizens
I was gonna
United,
say, remember
brother.
Steadfast? Thank you, CG. Same thought.
Yeah, they're as human as the rest of us as corporations.
No, they're
more
much
human,
more.
actually.
They're more
Much
human.
more.
Yeah. No, that's interesting, but not super important to, I guess, us. They'll figure that out, I suppose. Anyways, we can move on. It's just basically more Blizzard being very terrible and suspect, and we don't know what the fuck's happening with them. Apparently, they're making a new game, and apparently Diablo 4 is actually pretty good, is what I know. Those are the positives that are happening for Blizzard. Everything else is a negative. Can we think of any other positives?
And they came out and said that they're dropping support.
They
for
were
PvE
honest.
when they could have continued to not share that information.
True.
Yeah, that's
Great.
They were under no legal obligation to do so.
Knocking out of the park, man. Way to go,
fair.
man.
See, Fear Dragon. Here's what this allows them to do. Overwatch 3, this time with PvE.
We promise, for real this time. Third time's the charm.
I feel like it's a Charlie Brown and Lucy scenario at this point. It's like, I'm not gonna run, not gonna
Kick the football.
yank out the football this time. I promise. It's gonna
Yeah.
be okay.
Just keep falling for it. Oh, as they say, vote with your wallets. But apparently Overwatch 2 is free, so I'm actually a little more confused about that statement.
Don't buy the battle pass.
Yes, that much is true. Anyways, we'll move on. We're at about 2 3/4 hour, so I don't know how much longer you guys have, but I was asked by an individual at Frost Giant to do a Stormgate only episode before certain things were revealed. I don't know if we're gonna have time for that because it's been difficult creating these episodes. But if you wanted to just do a bit of a faster one, not a full 3 hours, maybe an hour, we can do that here.
So here's the trick: you cut recording and release this one separately, and it's 2 episodes for the price of 1, and then you have the full Frost Giant Stormgate episode. It just
No,
happens to be a little
here's what you
shorter.
do. Here's what you do, because that person wanted it. So we say we're gonna make a Patreon exclusive, and then we make it $1,000, and they will have to pay $1,000 to get access to our thoughts.
I mean, they have what 30? No, there's more than $30 million now, but they have like baseline $30 million of funding. They can afford $1,000.
Yeah, give us money.